We're live.
Hey, it's Jerry Grupp. I'm the chair of the Facilities Committee. Today is June 9th at 6:35. Representing the board in the room at this time are Denise Brooks, Wendy Thomas, Mike Forward, Jerry Grupp, Bill Foster. We're met as well with representatives of the administration, those being Matt Fredrickson, who's doing the technology for us today, Superintendent Robert Frazier, and Doug Taylor, the Director of Facilities. And our guest today's speaker is
Terry DeGroot, Terraform Engineering.
terrific.
All right. Great. Good evening. A couple things to go over tonight. Energy management update. We haven't touched on it in a little while, so I'm going to let you know where we are, what we've been doing. Facilities improvements project update. Talk about Newtown Holland and track construction that we mentioned would be on the agenda at the last board meeting. Capital improvement project update. What's happening this summer briefly. Miscellaneous update, Aramark Custodial Services, the scope of service change, so you understand how that looks moving forward through the next year, and the amendment to their agreement based on their revised fees, and some service maintenance contracts that are currently out for bid that will be coming to the board in the near future. First is the energy management update. The Aramark Monthly Energy Report from January does reflect an improvement in the Energy Star score of 4 points. So we are now at 80. We were once at 86. We're moving up. So that's 4 to the good. We're working hard with Aramark through retro commissioning to bird dog things and make improvements where we can, and we'll continue to do so. Part of that was a kickoff meeting that we had with Aramark with our green team back in March. We also then went to our maintenance team with the Aramark representative, Sean, and we talked to them about increasing our energy throughout the district. Meeting with Aramark weekly, that has commenced. So Sean from Aramark comes in, sits downstairs. He's working on building management systems. He moves around the district, checking on different things that he's identifying. And then we sit and we talk about what he found, what we need to do, and assigning those tasks to our staff to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. In addition, the retro commissioning efforts, part of what we found to date in just a couple weeks we've been working together, Holland Elementary School, a couple issues, Hillcrest, and Council Rock North. So at Holland Elementary School, we had some zone temperature set point issues. We could not set values over 75 degrees of the building management system, which is problematic when our cooling zones for our district policy is 76 to 80. So we couldn't even get to the bottom end of our cooling on the building management system. So by going through the building management system, checking set points, and doing things we need to do, the corrective action was, bless you, the control range on each individual temperature controller on the system was adjusted to allow us to move things where we need to, and all set points were at the 76 degree Fahrenheit setting when we finished that. So we're at the lower end, the cooler end of that, with the ability to move 2 degrees in the other direction if we need to.
Will you then need to readjust that come the others during the heating season?
The heating season, we believe, based on what you found, is already established for within the parameters of 68 to 70.
So they set to different ranges. It's not just a general comfort range.
Yep.
Okay.
So that was just set because that's what they thought was right, not like
It's interesting, when you have, commissioning is always a challenge, and when the systems are installed, now to say that, I will say that the commissioning, enhanced commissioning that we'll see at these 2 middle schools will be much different because of the LEED Gold certification and the amount of time we'll spend identifying and demonstrating to LEED that we have in fact met all of those set points. It's going to be far more involved than it is at these. Here we do have a commissioning agent that comes in, a third party, and we have in the specification all the set points for the whole building: fans, on, off, temperature control, exhaust. There's all sorts of things. Even a bathroom has exhaust fans that come on at a certain time, shut down at a certain time. They're not switched like they would be in a home. All of those things are set by what the engineer designed them to based on our district policy. They find things that aren't right. The mechanical engineer goes into the system. They have a subcontractor, Johnson Controls, whomever it is, Siemens, They go in, they make all those adjustments. As you're trying to figure it out, something isn't right, there's a glitch, something happens, then you get somebody going in from the other end. It could be us, and we go in and we change the set point because somebody's hot or somebody's cold. And there's back and forth, and there's adjustments by multiple people. What we've done since that project is we take that control away from everyone. We now keep it only with the controls manufacturer who's working on the project. And until the project's over, we don't touch the systems at all until they have fully commissioned the buildings and they've been accepted by our mechanical engineer. So a lot of this could be somebody fidgeting with numbers at home on the building management system, and then Siemens goes in or Johnson and changes something, and we're battling back and forth, and suddenly no one knows where the set points should be or were. So now we make sure that we have that in the hands of only one person until it's finalized. Chiller control, there were some issues with the chiller. The chiller was running often, and we had concern for the amount of runtime on the chiller. There were some issues with a low charge in the secondary compressor cycle, and the chiller was found to be energized at all times. So while the building was occupied, the chiller nearly never shut down. The building was cool in certain areas, warm in others, short cycling at times, on and off. But mostly on. So the manufacturer was contacted because it's a warranty issue. They did address the issues. It's now cycling efficiently, and the chilled water temperatures are within the parameters and staying there based on the set point. So that is all adjusted and good after the manufacturer came out.
So can I ask a question about, and sorry if you adjusted earlier, but since we have cooling loads only towards the ends of the school year in the beginning, so does that make it a little more challenging for us because these things sit idle for so long and then you switch them on?
The controls shouldn't change when we shut them off, at the end of the year and start to the next, but inevitably, you always find out your air conditioner doesn't work when you need it, like at home. So when we bring cooling on, that's when we find some of the things that might be problematic. So,
Well, in this instance, you have a low pressure of a secondary. So
Right.
the question
so the
becomes,
question was,
is there a leak?
Design
Right.
issue, is something happening? Right.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. So
So that was a little different. Hillcrest is still pneumatic control. So a lot of these buildings are digital controls. It's all building management. You go in, you plug it in. Even those you can go in and look at it. But the difference here is instead of electronic digital controls, these are pneumatic. Little plastic tubes, compressors run, the air is sent to the controls, and that's what actually makes the controls work first to there. It's the old design. They're tired. You generally try to get rid of pneumatic controls when you can. We're working our way through our schools doing that as we design new facilities. But we had some issues with the pressure reducing valve here. It wasn't able to provide adequate pressure due to leaks at the pressure reducing valve itself. So the corrective action, our men went in and found, rewired, repiped some of those controls at the pressure reducing valve and some solenoid valves downstream. All is good now. So that's something that we could, with the experience of our guy, take care of. We're fortunate to have a very experienced HVAC specialist.
Before you move on, that was a lot of problems. How long did it take us to find him?
He's been here for 2 weeks, within the first week. Those are the things that he identified and found.
Okay,
And we've
that's
adjusted.
what I was looking for.
Yes, that quick. So, really good stuff. Council Rock North, warm cool adjustment. There was an issue during the building management system trending review there that temperature zones were controlling outside the cooling standard. Overshooting by 3 degrees less than what they should be. Unfortunately, what happens over time, it's like anything else. When you work on a budget, it tends to creep up as you go. When you have energy standards, it tends that you start to slip out of those standards as time goes on. So if someone's not bird dogging this and making sure, and it's one of those challenges where our maintenance men are trying to be holding a policy, but at the same time being responsive to the requests within the buildings. So it depends what personality is coming to them and asking them to make it cooler, make it warmer, do whatever they need to do. Some people walk away and say, okay, I get it, it's policy. Others say, you got to fix it or I'm going to smash you over the head because I'm hot. So Some of the stuff is just creature habit, and we made adjustments over time, and it's become problematic. Some of it is somebody in a certain room says, I have a problem, we go into that room, we make an adjustment in that room by hand, and no one reports that it was problematic. And then over time, we have a bunch of rooms like that, and now none of them are really tied into the system the way they should be. So we need to be,
These things are balanced
yeah,
originally.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, and then over time,
So
they,
when you do that,
it takes that one out of the picture. So at any rate, we did adjust that, and now we are good in that regard at North. Then we have a new building lead at North who is helpful in coming in and, revisiting all of these things. So we did find a lot of things that were outside of where they should be, but we're reeling it all back in.
And what does that mean when you say that now it's at zero? Overridden to zero, so now, what does that mean, the correct value?
Essentially what it means is if the set point is between 78, if it's 76 to 82, we would say.
Right,
If you go to 78, you can go to 77, 76, you can go 79, 80. If it's between those ranges.
we're overridden to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, so that,
It's back to neutral essentially. So we
Okay.
can go 2 degrees in either direction and not,
okay, you're
we're
back,
not at the
you're back on the,
-3.
you're back on the, okay, your
could have said it
midpoint.
differently.
No, I understand, your midpoint is on the schedule,
right.
yeah.
the band was wider than it was supposed to be.
No, it wasn't that the band was wider, it was the, if we think of the T distribution, the midpoint was moved down 3 degrees, that's what it was.
So moving on to facilities improvement project updates. New Newtown Middle School and Holland Middle School projects, finalizing the land development agreements with both municipalities. They are both now on the board agenda for next week. So we'll be bringing the land development agreements to you for final approval. They've been reviewed by Eastburn and Gray. That's not something I even look at as heavily as they do. So Mike Carr and Rob Cox are on that. The building permits and associated fees from both municipalities are in progress, and we'll talk more about that as well next week. The Pliget agreement, it should be PLGIT. Pliget agreement are being finalized. Those are also on the board agenda for next Thursday. That's the financial security basically for both of those. The striping turning lane modifications at Holland and East Holland roads.
Can we come back to the Pliget agreements?
Yep.
Not here, because it's not this domain, but the Pliget agreements, I'm not sure what's involved in those, so maybe Robert can just update, not you, Robert, Robert, just because we've gone through this whole thing, and every time Pliget comes up, it also involves our financing and the way we're putting money aside, and we have that consulting that we do, so I just want to get the harmonization of what Pliget means in this, and if there's some aspect of this. I don't think there is, but I'm not sure what is involved in the Pliget agreements. Do you?
No idea.
Okay, I'll bring it up to Bob, so we're ready for that.
Just because the term comes up,
Yep.
and it was a term of discussion in finance.
No problem. So the striping turn lane issues at Holland, East Holland were removed. This is just a reminder that that's something we're going to revisit at a later date down the road after we open the building and see how traffic functions.
Good question. The fees that the municipalities are charging, are they changing or?
I don't think we ever talked about the final numbers, but I'd rather do that offline at this point. And we
So
can
are they
talk.
going to, they're still in negotiation and when you come next week, they'll be firm?
They will, we're gonna call an executive session before next week's board meeting to talk about that in advance of the board vote.
And that would be because that executive session is qualified because it's potential litigation, which is one of the exceptions to
Well,
public
there's
sunshine.
another issue also.
I understand, but my point is for the people listening, why it would be an executive session? Because it's potential litigation, which is a
Will it be public
qualified.
knowledge how much the municipalities are charging us?
After it's board approved, it will be, yes.
After it's board approved?
Uh,
As it's board approved, right?
as it's board approved, yes.
Okay.
As it's being board
So
approved
the
and then
public
once
will
it's board
see
approved.
how
Well,
much.
Once
Yes.
the board knows about it, we can take a tack on whatever we want to do with that information.
Sure.
Once we know about it.
I don't want to be in a position, and I'll just very clearly say this, I don't want to be in a position to approve municipalities' fees next week, that the public doesn't find out what they are until next week if they're excessive. Now, what I mean by excessive and what you mean by excessive, I think is open to interpretation. So if you need to know that ahead of time, feel free to talk to me.
Okay.
But I won't vote next week if the community has not had enough time to absorb what I think are excessive fees from a taxing body to a taxing body. So that's where I stand, just so I'm clear. And I hate when no fault of you guys, because I know you're trying to negotiate and fix it, and so there's no issues till last minute. But then I have to approve something that night because then you can't do something else. So I need to be clear with what I feel comfortable approving so that you guys can plan accordingly.
Sure.
As it's an executive session topic, we don't need to be bound by the time that we're all here. So this may be one of those things that when Rob and you, Rob Cox, and you and Ryan all have a handle on this, we might need to have a conference call to talk it through on the phone, which will, so if we have a conference call in the earlier part of the week, we then know what we're doing.
Well, even if I know, if I think,
You can make a decision what you want to do with that information at that
yeah,
time.
they need us to approve these things because you have a
Right.
next step, I'm sure, right? So then it's gonna be June 19th. Our next board meeting is until July.
Exactly.
So my concern with this is, I don't believe I'll be alone if there's an uncomfortableness or if the public didn't have enough time. Because, you know, in a scenario which hopefully won't happen, where the fees are more than I think are reasonable, I am left with stopping the projects you're voting for, right? So I'm in a corner, but I want enough time for the public to know, because if the public raises a ruckus, perhaps other elected officials might alter their thinking. But then I've stopped my project anyway because I haven't voted on it.
Right.
So I just want to be transparent. I'm
Understood.
gonna have to stop the project if that's gonna happen, because I'm gonna be standing on the streets of that township screaming and yelling and handing out flyers. And I hope my friends from Citizens Education will join me, because that is absurd. And so, but that takes time. And meanwhile, we can't move forward, and it's the summer.
So this is why we'll talk about it in executive session, because it's more, it's the amount of money, but it's also the process around the amount of money.
Yeah,
So it's that process in particular that we need to talk about in executive session. So we'll try to do that.
So- my advice, Robert, is just to say, I get you're trying to work this out in the meantime or whatever. If the earlier, that gives me time to say, oh, the public had 5 days to know. It's really not gonna give me enough time to rally people, but it becomes a little easier for me than we put it out on the website, because we were still trying to work on it on Wednesday, which is, could happen,
Understood.
and then nobody knows.
If we needed to, could we vote on it at the finance meeting on the 23rd to buy another?
That's a good,
We technically could, and we could also call a special board meeting
right, we could do
at any
that too.
point as well.
I don't want you guys to be backed up.
Understood. We've been wrestling with this.
I know,
Doug in
we've been working
particular has
hard on it.
wrestling with it, so we understand.
Okay.
It's been with both townships, we've been wrestling with it,
Yeah.
for quite a few weeks now.
Yeah.
So, acknowledging that I came into this discussion, we're talking about Newtown Township.
Talking about both.
We're talking about the permits and the inspection fees.
Right.
Yeah. Which has been public. I mean, this is not a secret. There were discussions, and it was reported in the newspaper that the Board of Supervisors failed to have a vote to give us a discount on the fees, right?
Correct, that was, but I don't think anybody on this board made any, or we didn't really do a campaign. So if you read that article, yes, but I thought there was still work being done, and we were trying to work out a solution. I certainly don't want to cause Newtown a problem if they are going to compromise with us. So I've been waiting we've done all the compromising we can, here's the final number. If those are the final numbers, I will be standing on the streets handing out flyers,
Well,
so.
and to your point, if you read any of the blogs or anything that associated with those articles, the public was pretty outraged. So it only serves us to, be able to process what that is and let the public weigh in.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying, and ultimately, we've got huge projects here that we have to vote on, we have to move forward on. So we're between a rock and a hard place and whatever, but anyway, I just wanted you guys to know, I think that's why we had this committee
Absolutely.
meeting, so you get an idea of where we are.
Sure thing.
Are you saying you're having the same problems, same type of problems with Northampton Township?
We need to have an executive session
Okay.
on this, so that's what we're saying. And this conversation is really much better served for that environment. So respectfully, I would make that request.
When are we doing that?
We're gonna try to set up a conference call for early next week. And get that set up through that channel.
So can I ask a question before you move on? So you're finalizing land development agreements with both municipalities. Have you been in front of Newtown Township yet for the final
We don't
land
have-
development agreement?
Right, we don't revisit them. We have the agreements that their solicitor and our solicitor have worked out, and they're on the board, will be on the board agenda for next Thursday.
Next Wednesday. For the planning commission or the board?
No, our board.
No, for our
Or
board.
for our board meeting?
Yep.
So it's been approved through Newtown already?
Yes.
Because that was a step we were waiting for.
That's what we've been waiting for, is for Newtown solicitor to finalize the agreement, which is based upon all of the approval language that we had in the months leading up to it, and Northampton to do the same for their project. So next Thursday, we will have for both projects, the land development agreements and the plated agreements.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Matt?
Now, can you move the little, thank you. So, what's happening at Newtown Middle School at this time? There was a notice to proceed on 19 April for the contractors. Submittals, clearances, paperwork is in process. Building information modeling, the BIM three-dimensional coordination drawings is in progress. That is a very important process. All of the contractors meet weekly to prepare those coordination drawings. Each one of their pipes, steel, components, ceilings, you name it, that goes in the building is in the model. And they're making sure that their final actual real ductwork and everything else that they're providing fits within the ceiling cavities based on ceiling heights that are established, based on the depths of steel and all the other things that happen. So they're coordinating, making sure fixtures and everything else will go in after everybody's materials are in place. That takes several months. They're working hard on it. Erosion and sediment control is in progress. It's driven by Newtown Middle School. You can see a lot of earthwork is happening. The topsoil has been stripped. Temporary sediment basin construction is complete. The storm runs, end wall, head wall installation is in progress. Temporary parking lots in progress. And then a bunch of things that are going to happen between the end of June and August. Basically, the fencing is moving, becoming larger. Now the kids are out of the building where the exact building will be constructed. We're going to take that piece over. The tennis courts will be removed. Additional water lines for the building pad will be installed. And they'll modify the existing parent drop-off slightly. It'll still happen in the area that it does, but it'll be compressed a bit to allow room for the new construction. So Matt, I'm not sure.
I'm taking your battery died.
Nope.
I thought that was the system you had said.
So to June 24th, all of the utilities, the underground stormwater is going in. This construction has been installed, preparing basins in this area, which you'll see photos of. Temporary parking lot pad has been brought up to elevation. They're working on it. Have the construction entrance done, fencing is in, and all sorts of earthwork is happening. Large cuts and the things that establish the final subgrades are.
Before you turn, Doug, in the upper left quadrant, you pointed to the line. Yeah.
Yeah.
That line, that's not the sewer line that we've been,
That's storm.
that's storm, okay.
Yeah.
Because the sewer line,
And all of the Tyler State Park kind of runs down to a swale and comes down into this head wall, and then comes through our site, and we also come down and tie into that.
no, it looked like it was traversing some other property, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Good. So then from June to August, as I discussed, we'll begin to take over the piece of building area. The tennis courts are here. Our building will go in this area. They'll start some additional basin work, some underground stormwater management. They'll get the stone drive and trailer laydown area installed. We have some temporary sidewalk that wraps around here, so we have safe means of egress around the building. Temporary parking lot will be done. Some reconfiguration of the parent drop-off down in the bottom area. all things that will happen between now and the end of August. So they arrived, the equipment arrived, and a lot of it. Blair Construction is doing a tremendous job with site work out here. They're really moving soil and doing a great job. There's an example of what used to be grass in the top of grade and just how much topsoil has been stripped in some of these
Is that like
areas.
12 inches?
Yeah, they've done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it smells good, it's nice, it's good stuff. Here you can see some of the topsoil that's been stored in the back of the site.
Doug, will they just plant grass on that?
They will, they'll have to establish that per the conservation district. Here you can see some of the cut, from where we were to the bottom. This is, I think, about 8 inches on top of this is our field elevation, right, roughly? So this is an area where the grass field is in the corner near Tyler State Park. You can see that they've done a lot of work out there. Structures that arrived.
Not to be silly, July 4th obviously is not happening here, right? They used to have the fireworks July 4th.
It's actually happening.
At all.
At all.
Oh, okay. Wanted to think
I
ahead.
hope July 4th happens.
Well, yeah, I know. It's most importantly, it happened in the year it was supposed to happen. That was most important, but okay.
Some of our new structures are in place, manhole covers, ready to go for final grading later.
So that's at grade level that you
Close to
could
it.
shoot
Close,
off.
Make final adjustments.
Roughly, you could roughly shoot off the top of that manhole cover, roughly.
Roughly.
Yep.
This is one of our, this is the pipe that I talked about. Tyler State Park water comes into this, the pipe you asked about, Jerry, the end wall and heading down to our site.
Are those pipes strong enough structurally for the trucks and stuff to be driving them? Like,
Oh, yeah.
they look plastic. They are.
They are
They're
plastic.
they're very strong.
Okay.
And the good news is they fit together much better than concrete pipes do.
Who's doing the pipe work? Is that also Blair?
It is, yeah. One of our temporary sediment basins, you can see it's actually functioning well, which is good stuff. Some of our sorting materials for recycling, we have concrete, some metal. They're starting to sort that stuff and make sure per our lead gold recycling materials. This is a piece of the project that we didn't expect, that we found, that we're working on. We knew that there were 2 manholes and tanks, one at either end, but we didn't know that there were another 14 tanks below grade between them. So they're actually 6 to 8 feet below finished grade. So when we cut, we found the tops of those tanks.
And what are they containing?
They were sanitary tanks. They're not on the existing drawings. The 2 manholes are, but not everything in between. There was an old field in the back that we looked for. We did some test pits, didn't find any of this, and when they made some major cuts, they opened up the top of these 14 holes, and I'll show you those. That is the top of an opening down into one of those tanks. They're vertical, so they're stacked almost like a hot water heater kind of tank,
And
but
what kind of volume? are they
2,000 gallons each. And unfortunately, you can't see it here, but they're
Liquids are in.
full of a liquid that is part sewage. It looks like there's a little oily sludge on the top of them. So we are remediating that. That's what the tank truck is. We're still in the process of getting that out of there. So,
Are you going to backfill them in the end? Is that the?
well, we're now looking at the best approach. There's a couple things that we want
Time
to,
capsules.
we want to make sure we do everything.
I forgot we had somebody here.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is make sure with an environmental consultant that we don't have any kind of issues outside of those tanks proper. So we want to find out what the material exactly is. We have test reports coming back for it. We want to make sure that we do some soils testing around it to make sure that nothing leached outside of the tank. It does not appear that that happened, but we're going to check to make sure. And then we're going to find out what we have to do. Assuming the soils are clean and we get the material out of the tank, we have an option of perhaps removing them clearly, or because they're going to be so far below grade, filling them with stone and minimizing the cost. They're in a field area, they're not where building lives, so they're in an area that's safe.
Has the environmental consultant been on site?
Yeah, we had some testing done.
So, you know, I mean, obviously you test, that's what determines what you have, but these people have been in the business a long time. They can use their eyes and senses and kind of know whether they.
We don't think that it's anything too serious.
It's old sewage
Right.
for the most part, and there's a little bit of lead oil.
So have you been able to track that? It at one time tied into the disposal system from the building. So it's as compared to, I want to dispel this very quickly, as compared to a storage tank for you know, a petroleum product, it was never.
No, it's never, no.
Exactly. So the little oil may be oil that had come from a grease trap that had just.
There was an
come up
issue
to the
here
top.
before I was here, I think.
Not long before I was there.
Somebody had dumped oil into one of those old tanks,
So that would be bad.
and that's probably the aftermath. of
Which we
that.
cleaned and had cleared up, but, you know, I don't know.
It appears to leak into these other tanks, which is fine.
Interesting.
So we're working on it, just want to make you aware that it's, you know, our first unforeseen at Newtown Middle School. I will tell you that the ballpark for the removal of the liquids is probably in the $15,000 range, so we're not talking tens of thousands, but it's still a significant number to get it out. We're working on that. Holland Middle School, basically the same schedule as we're on with the Newtown Middle School. Site work is slightly behind where we are with Newtown, but they're rapidly catching up. They're moving along out there. Another really good site contractor is working for us on that project. Bowers is doing a nice job.
Who is it?
Bowers. So we're basically on the same path as we are at the other project. To give you a quick overview between where we are today and the end of June, the construction entrance, stone, the trailers are all in place. We have some underground stormwater management to install in this area. We've established, this is the bus drop-off right now between Hillcrest and Holland. We've established our own Council Rock storage trailer compound here to move materials from inside out while we're doing renovations. So that's happening. And outside, you'll see some fencing, which is a staging area for where they're working in the building for the first phase of that. So that's pretty much in place and on track. What will happen from the end of June to August is some additional stormwater management at the bottom of the site. The footings will start for the classroom additions at the end of the building. We'll start to see building pad soils exchange work happening here. We have to take a lot of soils out and put engineered soils back because the existing soils are not suitable for bearing for the new building, which we talked about a while back, that we added cost because of that, of those soils conditions. And then some of the MEP, the electrical site work begin staging, getting one chiller and moving it around the back.
I'm putting all of that stuff in the back.
Eventually, all of this stuff that you see out here gets moved to the back, so we'll have a nice clean,
Those brand new chillers. Huh?
we're using them.
I'm
Yeah.
just checking.
Yeah, please.
No, they're new.
They're,
Brand new, yeah.
they're like 3 years old.
They're new.
They're new and being reused, should I say again. So from a building phasing standpoint, right now, we're working in this upper right-hand corner. This is the drop-off between Hillcrest and Hollands, where the students come in from the buses in the morning, the kitchen, the cafeteria area, and the boiler room. So over here were some classrooms. They're being renovated to the new tech ed spaces. The tech ed that lives in this area will move from it over to here before kids return for the next school year. So we have to get this wrapped up. It's critical to this next phase. And the locker rooms, storage at the bottom of the existing gym need to be modified so that we have a locker room on each side so that we can take over this area in the near future, take that locker room out of commission. That is going well. I talked about the fencing outside, the staging for that interior work. That's what is shown here. These were the classrooms inside that piece of the building. So you can see everything's been demolished. The floors have been removed. Underground piping is being installed. This is an upper level area where we had, it's an HVAC room, ceilings removed, floors removed, moving forward with work. It's directly next to the tech ed area, that this becomes part of that room, so we're working on getting both areas ready. This was a piece of floor from an adjacent room that came out at this level, only for, 15 feet wide by 10 feet. That becomes part of the room below. So they removed that and beginning to get a new floor in place. To the left is one of those new underground piping that's been installed for new fixtures in the tech ed. This is a test. Basically, that pipe gets connected to a gauge. We fill the pipe with air, and we leave it sealed for 24 hours to make sure that there's no leaks. Then we pour the concrete over the pipe. We don't pour concrete and then find out the pipe's a problem. So we're testing all of the lines. This is another area on Holland, one of our first unforeseens. The thickness of this wall is only 4 inches. By today's standards, you would never span an interior masonry wall this dimension by this length at 4 inches. So we're going to remove some of those existing walls and put in new stud walls in their place. So there'll be a little bit of extra demolition we have to talk about. But
Let's see if you.
I'm sorry, they're block, concrete masonry units, cinder blocks. Yeah. Site work definitely has moved. They were stripping topsoil. They have their large equipment moving as well. They have their silt socks in to keep any of our erosion from going to the neighboring areas. This is an example of a silt sock. In the middle of this is an existing stormwater drain. This keeps any of our site activity from going into those drains and groundwater from washing into streams down below our site. Because if that were to happen, Conservation District would be knocking on their door asking what's happening. So we protect everything we can to contain it to our site. So that's kind of an update on those two projects, and a lot more is happening even today as we speak.
Doug, I'll just comment on at least Holland Middle, because I drive by it every day. They're keeping it nice and neat and clean, well managed. They're doing a nice job. So
Yeah, thank you.
they should hear that occasionally.
Yeah.
So.
The 15,000 to begin to rectify the tank situation is part of the contingency, is that where that money comes from?
Yeah, we have.
What is
we
that
have-
budget again for Newtown? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's roughly 2.some million, I believe.
Typically 4% of the project.
We
And that
have-
was a percentage of the project.
4%.
Yeah, for the two projects, yeah.
We have significant monies to address those kind of things.
I know, but typically those monies end up not all being used.
And that's
So
always
they're in
our
the
goal,
project,
yeah.
I get that,
Yeah.
but I like to keep my head on them because,
What I'll be doing is we provide updates to you, packets. I'll give you the starting allowances and things that have been addressed and where we stand, so you'll always know. Some of this can be allowances as well, but this is an issue where our own environmental people are taking the liquids out. We're not paying the contractors markup to do it. We're
Oh,
doing
really?
it with our own service contractor who's worked for us in the past.
okay. So I would, I like to keep a tab on with that,
Yeah.
because if we had to fill it, we could buy stone, if we fill this tank, or we, that's gonna be.
Right, that'll come from the GC's allowance amount, because that's something we can use. We don't have to go into contingency. He has some allowance we can,
Okay,
hopefully, again, being mindful and value engineering, if we can fill it with stone and save
Right.
money, then that's what we'll do.
Right, right.
But we need to make sure environmentally we're being, responsible. So we'll see what is out there before.
okay.
What I'd like to do with this running track discussion, if we can, is let the guest present what he came to present today.
I pretty much,
And then allow some public comment, because allow them to make whatever, case or discussion points they wanted to make to the board, and then we'll talk about it as a board and try and get it that way, because otherwise they're giving input after we've already talked. And we already had a little bit of discussion at the board table about it, so if
makes
that's all
sense.
right with everybody to do it that way.
Yeah, so I prepared a lot of this based on the history of the track presentations. Terry's going to add whenever he feels necessary. We've talked about this as I prepared.
And then we'll take public
And
comment.
then we'll go public comment, and that's fine. However you want to do it, I'm good. If you want to have something is shown, ask a question, I'm okay with that too. I don't mind. Either way.
Well, let's let the board will interact, and we always do,
Yeah.
then we'll take the public comment after that. Seriously.
Sounds good. So I want to just kind of start from the beginning. Early presentations during the very early schematic design phase by Breslin. I'm speaking primarily to Newtown here because we never planned a track per se at Holland. We were always looking at a brand new site plan for Newtown. So we talked about tennis courts and we talked about a track early on. He showed those things on a site plan, which I'll show you. But as I said, at Holland, we didn't really have the discussion about, in the onset of this, tennis courts or running tracks. Early design phase discussions and budgetary constraints determined that we would remove the tennis courts and track from the Newtown Middle School project. Again, we were mindful of a budget for two large projects. We were concerned for $110 million. And you will see later, the addition of a track on that site, even from the early design, compromised our ability to meet our programming needs for three or four multi-purpose fields that we asked for. So I'll show you that as well. So then the running track discussions resurfaced in early June of 2015, provided some information to the board, but again, consistent with where the board was initially. We had concern a year ago still for budgetary concerns, not knowing where these projects would come in, and a $110 million budget. So we decided that it probably was not the best move to add a track at that time.
Doug, before you go on, which one of those bullets happened in public and public?
I'll be able to show that better when I show those.
And I'll wait.
Yep. So the running track, that didn't. That was just a memo to the board.
The last one.
The memo in June of 15, there was a memo to the board.
I knew the last one. I think the first two were public.
So then the running track discussions resurfaced in the last 2 months, May, June. Information was provided to the board, but again, I believe was tabled because of initial budgetary concerns that we had, consistent with, the theme all the way through. So I don't think it was for good reasons. The running track discussions continued through public comment at our last board meeting, and the board suggested that the topic be included tonight for facilities. So here we are. That's kind of how we got here. And we now know what we didn't know at the beginning, that we came in $2 million under on each project for roughly $105 million, not $110 million. Things look good and favorable. That's where we stand financially with these two projects. A summary of the running track discussions is what I'll provide. Sketches, I'll show you where we were and where we are. Some preliminary budgets for those and some considerations relative to, I won't say pros and cons, but just considerations for tracks. So this was a drawing that was never presented to the public. This is a drawing that during the very early design phase, the architect Breslin showed us internally for a potential site design. This is before we had any major programming discussions. This was a conceptual plan they brought to us. You may have worked with them on it, I'm not sure, but you guys brought this to us. And as you can see, where the building used to be, where it is now, that will be demolished, we're proposing a field just as we are today. A ball field in this corner as we are today. This ball field is up in the corner, it's been moved in the final design down here. The football field with a track, and we had 4 tennis courts shown. So you can see we have 2 multi-purpose fields essentially, 2 baseball fields and a tennis court with a track. It was a couple fields short of what our programming requirements were for all-purpose fields on the site. So we talked and said, hey, we don't have tracks today. We're not going to put a track in on this project. Let's take the tennis courts and reduce from 4 to 3 to minimize the cost, because I don't know that we even need the tennis courts here. We're not going to have them in Holland. It's not parity. Bless you. So in this scheme, the football field moved to the top where it finally will live. The tennis courts were shown. We had the baseball field in its final home and 2 athletic fields next to it, softball field and this field. So now we have 4 kind of multi-purpose fields, 2 baseball, softball, and the tennis courts. And this was in June 15.
And this was presented where? Was this at a facilities meeting?
I don't think this was presented at facilities, but what was to have the one presented at facilities coming up.
Okay.
So then there was question at that time in June of 15 about tracks. Hey, we want to consider tracks, reconsider tracks. So we did some very 1,000-foot kind of sketches saying, hey, maybe we could put a track up here in the northwest corner. Here's the new building. Here's that baseball field. Here's the 2 athletic fields. If we put the track up here, it's going to compromises adjacent play fields, and it compromises the outfield, left field, center field a bit on a baseball field. Tight up in here, retaining walls and things probably required, and maybe retaining walls along the back of the site.
And it's a little hard to see on this sketch, you can see it better on the color sketches, but the baseball field to the left, the upper left-hand corner there, that gets cut down about 50, 60 feet, depending, the outfield's a little bit shorter. And then more importantly, the 2 fields to the right of that, the multi-purpose soccer and hockey fields, those are shortened in length. Now, you do have a lot of leeway on the width of the fields for what you can do and still be PAAA compliant, but on the length, there's not too much place. You can really lose those fields as
They're not PIAA.
PIAA play. Right.
And just, when in professional sports teams, they play with a baseball field and a football field, they overlay them, and they obviously dress it. This is a track surface that would bisect, so you can't have a track surface bisecting.
No, that wouldn't be bisected, that would just be probably a bank between the track and the baseball field. Again, the baseball, not the end of the world, you talk about 200-foot outfield, maybe a little less. This is middle school. But the other fields, I think that's very critical to their function.
So the other thing that you could, and it looks simple on a flat surface, this line runs up and down the sheet is an embankment, grade change from this field level to the field level next door. So you can't simply take the field, turn it in the east-west direction and say, well, just reorient the field, because there's a huge embankment there that will.
Approximate number of feet? What do we?
Do you have the ballpark?
It's about 5 or 6 feet.
So significant.
It varies, yeah,
Yeah,
significant.
it's significant.
Yeah, that's not a little bit.
No, it'd be really uncomfortable at midfield. Yeah. So we looked at the track down where the building used to be, and it really doesn't work with Green Lane, nor does it work with our entry drive, which, by the way, ties into a PennDOT road, which would have to be reconfigured and affect PennDOT approvals as well as Tyler State Park involvement.
Even if we desire to relocate those roads, the driveway, we're right next to Tyler Park, so we really can't move further. We're closer to the park. And Green Lane would have to move closer to the intersection with the bypass. And you've all been through there, and they would have messed that, PennDOT would never allow that to be closer to their busy years.
So the property line with Tyler, it is right on the other side of that?
That's the
That is, yeah.
I mean, the way it's shown, I mean, it looks like it's so close to fitting. Is that not the case?
Because it's running over the road.
It's actually overlapping the road, right? A whole lane, at least a lane of the road.
So the track itself
16 feet.
overlaps the road, and in addition to the track, you need some space around that track to grade it in and fit it into that space. So I think this pretty clearly shows that doesn't work.
So how many feet short are we of it working?
Yeah, you might need another 50, 75 feet to make it fit. You can do a lot of things with walls if you really have to fit something in. But horizontally, you can see it, that track goes over the drive over Innsborough Road and over Green Lane there. So
Well, realistically, as it's positioned there, that even people to observe or be part of it, they'd have to be on the interior, the infield portion of the track to participate or watch it, because.
Or standing on the bypass.
Yeah, well, I was trying to be a little more generous than that. And
It
there's
does
also,
cut into our 12-foot embankment.
I was just gonna say, we also have a berm, which is required to be there. That's in that little triangle that's defined by the driveway and the road. There's a berm there.
So this site, really, if we want to consider a track, needs to be up in this corner. And even then, it's not
it's
again.
very, very tight. It's not to say that it cannot be done, but it's going to have some challenges.
And in the process of doing that, back up one more, just for a second. In the process of doing that, you give up the soccer fields.
Yeah, and we'll show that again in the future slide. It's more easy to understand. This is just a sketch that we did a year ago.
This was publicly presented.
This was not, this was given to the
Okay,
board.
okay.
This was an email to the board.
Before me, I apologize.
That's okay, yeah.
So actually, can you go back? So what I don't know, because I haven't spoken to any coaches and I don't have the athletics perspective, that front site, you can't fit a full-size track. Is there utility to a shorter track, or is there utility to a track program and just having some of the straightaways? Because you have events that, are whatever, 100-yard dashes and hurdles and relays. And so are there components that you could fit there that would still have some programmatic value? That's unclear to me.
Well, what I have seen at other facilities in the schools, they'll have a jogging track or a walking track. And it's basically a paved path. This is what we're showing up here is PIAA 6-lane compliant track. But you could do, some kind of fitness path.
Right.
And that's
I mean,
something
because
that could be worked around the
when you're
perimeter.
training,
Just so you know, that's sitting right next to a state park that's full of paved paths.
Well,
I do realize that, I'm just saying.
And just so we are clear, this is also, we gave an easement to Newtown Township many years ago on this property, which is the Ice Tea Trail, which runs along New Road and then comes down, and Barry was over there, Barry Desko was the principal at the time, and we had to figure out where, it's probably, the embankment's probably gonna have to cause us to move. And it's an interesting question we have to understand. That Ice Tea Trail, we gave them an easement. I think we need to explore what our obligation is to restore that, because we need that property now. So do we have to rebuild that Ice Tea Trail, or does our easement permit us to exclude that? This is something we have to, so to demonstrate where that is, the Ice Tea Trail, aside from running along the road, comes across here and connects up to.
We still have that.
It's
My
actually,
question is, do we have to maintain it if we're going to disturb it with this construction? Do we have a responsibility to rebuild it? Or is that the township's responsibility as per the easement agreement? Because we gave them easements, we didn't give them ownership.
the trail is, and it's very hard to see on here, but the trail runs right through here.
Right.
And then as you come around here, then you can see it across the green line. Goes up through here, and it goes up towards the high school. There's also, just north of the middle school, there's a connection to trails that go back to the park, and of course over here shows the Tyler Park. We are proposing a connection to that trail right here, applying that trail system. We are not disturbing that existing trail at all.
Okay, cool.
It's just, we stayed away from that. So even whatever what we are proposing here, the grass field is respecting that. Matter of fact, we've since saved some oak trees out here that we thought were worth
We
it.
saved all those large oak trees as part of our property.
As a buffer.
As a buffer.
Just as a nice
We
feature.
were gonna, try to maximize more of that athletic playfield area, but then the more we looked at it, we said, hey, these are beautiful, mature, healthy oak trees, let's save those along the road, so.
I still have more questions about this. So, my understanding is, so I get that there's paved trails all through Tyler Park, but I'm guessing that we don't let our kids during the school day use those trails for PE. I assume we want to keep our kids on the site.
They run through my neighborhood every day.
What's that?
They run through my neighborhood every day in gym class.
That's the high school or the middle school? Middle school kids on the
Our
track?
kids, middle school kids go to Tyler for gym.
So when kids are wanting to do sprints for training for track, you can run on a grass surface, but if that grass has divots or whatever, you're exposed to injuries. And I'm assuming that people have injuries running on these grass fields. So again, from an athletics perspective, from the health and welfare of the kids, for the robustness of the program, can you still get value out of some elements that are smaller, that's not a full-size track? You can still run on it. So I'm still curious about that, because I think these team sports are great, but they don't lead to lifelong activity. They just don't. People in their 40s don't go play lacrosse or or football or what have you, but hopefully they go running. So, I think that's the issue for me. That's what's at stake here.
Could I ask another question along the lines of what Bill is talking about? Could you, I don't know PIAA regulations, could you have meets if you had a smaller track?
There could be no records set at the school. I don't know that you would want to have meets at a place where a kid runs some crazy
No, but I mean, like,
mile
could
that
you, like,
can't ever
that's,
be recorded.
could you, like, are there?
I don't know that you could have a PIAA meet at a track that isn't PIAA.
Yeah, once you're in the 7th grade, you're under PIAA jurisdiction, so if you want it to be an official meet, then whatever you're playing on, your playing surface, et cetera, needs to meet their requirements, their standards.
Opponents could legitimately say, we're not gonna meet it.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to go back to Bill's question, is there some value, some utility to something modified? Sure there is. There is with anything. You can have gradations to it, but it certainly isn't the same as having a legitimate 6-lane track, which is what the PIAA would be.
Expensive item.
Certainly, yeah.
I'm familiar with other schools that have substandard or very, very low standard tracks. Matter of fact, I think 2 Catholic schools that we have out there, they can't compete on those fields. They have to borrow another school's track.
Well, we can't
Well, we
compete
don't,
on
we
ours
travel for
either.
every meet now.
Right. So,
But I'm sure if we had, it's just interesting to me because if it started and said that programmatically you were looking at this, when you were developing the plans, but programmatically we have a track program. And so I apologize because there was very little conversation about tracks previously. I'm not going to say there was not information given to us. And retrospectively, I certainly wish that there had been greater conversation because what I've learned about the track program more recently is pretty compelling. And I'm sure back then, if we had thought that programmatically as we're planning this, that the track program had every bit as much of an importance as the other things that we were looking for. And if we said to our architects, this is what we want, include a track, I'm pretty convinced we would have found a way to get a regulation sized track there. Maybe not, but that's what I'm thinking. But, it is an interesting conversation and I would love to hear from track coaches or others involved with the track program to understand if at this juncture it's not possible to have a regulation track, are there benefits to putting a track in that is not regulation that would help enhance the program? So I don't know if that's been discussed or if the track coaches were ever consulted about that.
Well, you did, so you look at the general view. Obviously, the program was put together, people were consulted, you must have consulted someone. Doug, you weren't deciding we needed 4 fields, so you obviously weren't with the
Right,
staff.
this was a meeting with the principals and their staff to talk about what the programs needed to be. And those programs were established when we sought proposals from the architects before they were even hired. We said, here's what the building wants to be, here's generally what the fields want to be. And then the team was brought on board. The architect, like any architect, comes in and shows things that aren't necessarily asked for.
And
then we reel them in and say, wait a minute.
And when you showed those drawings before, they weren't shown to the board. Presumably, who were they shown to the principals and staff?
I have to go back here to see what the architect's original presentation to us was the day they came and presented to.
And I'd be interested to know who the us was, to answer.
Us was the day that the board interviewed the architects, and Breslin came in and did their presentation, did a fly-through of their building, and then also showed drawings. If the site plan at that time had that, I don't recall.
I was trying to, my question really related to, once you got into the programmatic features of the building, that us was the staff, the us was the people who would have made those, the coaches, the athletic department.
Sure, they were all involved.
Yeah, but my memory of this is my memory of what happened. So early on in the process, we had no idea what the price tag was going to be. I think a lot of us were balking at the 110. We hadn't gone out for financings. We had no idea what the bond market would be. So that was just an estimate. It could have been worse if interest rates went up. And I think we were asked as a group, so, you know, what do you think about tracks and tennis courts? And I think we said, you know, I don't think we can go there. So I think the school board had a say early on, and we were concerned about money. And I don't think a lot of design work followed, looking at options for tracks, because we said we didn't have the money.
Just,
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
So
Can I ask a question before we move on, please?
Sure.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
We can't get off that one.
No.
I'm trying.
Can you tell me where the barn sits, the building in the state park?
Where the word entry is, in overlaps entry.
It's over in this area.
Okay.
It's
So
just-
there's no opportunity to get another piece of that parcel from the state. Someone's
No,
gonna
it's a good
say,
question.
so I'm asking.
It's a really good question. We tried, Mark, to borrow this piece of site to mow and use for a temporary athletic field. And it was easier.
not
to
even
mow.
temporary.
Okay.
Not even temporary. The requirements to restore it were building a golf course.
I mean, that goes hand in, it's very much akin to the difficulty we had with getting an easement to run a sewage line underneath it, where we were obligated to restore. That was not a given
Right. So
either,
we went with the force main that we could hopefully push through as opposed to excavating.
Excavating.
the site.
and restore.
The other part of that, Terry could mention, there's a lot of setback issues up in here that they specifically.
Before we take it past this sketch or the updated sketch that we'll get to eventually, we would have to take it to the township. We did get zoning variances for the fields that we are currently building. Then obviously those are just grass fields, not a structure like a track. But they have to be 200, according to the ordinance, 200 feet from the property line.
The property line's not 200 feet deep back there, is it?
Well, there's the property line, so by.
So we got a variance to allow the field as represented on it.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. The grass lawn that we're putting in, calling a field, has to have a grass lawn of 200 feet to the property line.
You should be on their board because you know exactly what they're asking. So,
You said it perfectly.
That's not unreasonable at all. You're making that sound like it's unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable at all.
Well, that is-
so anyway, that is required, their ordinance, and we did get relief to do the field as we have them.
Because it
But
can't-
we'd have to go back, again and get relief for a track. And then obviously it's a more permanent structure, it's more grass. And who knows what they would say. And I will note that when we went through the process, Tyler Park wrote an official letter to the township requesting that all their buffering and setback requirements be met and not bent to protect the township. Now, the first time through, that letter didn't carry a whole lot of weight, but I guess the more aggressive we get in developing it, the more aggressive they may get in trying to push back at that as well.
So you get some variances. And what is the setback for the fields that you have?
200 feet. And if you want to
It is
put
200.
200 feet, yeah.
So what was the variance that you got?
We got variance to allow the fields as shown in the plan. I think the closest one might have been 60 or 70 feet.
Okay.
And we would be a
Very
little,
lines wherever we put a painted line.
yeah, we said, here's the fields we're designing, and it is a painted line. But in this, now with a track, it's not a painted line anymore. So I'm not sure how the zoning hearing board would react to that, but the only question, we have to go through them. And if you would like to put lights on your fields, they would have to be 500 feet from the property line, or you need a variance for that.
So is the track surface considered an impervious surface?
It is.
Definitely, yeah.
Does that affect do we have any issues if we did a track? Does that affect our parking lot ratios or anything like that? Or do we have plenty of grass?
No, that they would not affect your parking.
We have. On Holland Middle School at the same time, we took a look at the same thing. At this time, at about 1,000 feet, we looked at it and said, hey, here's our proposed football field. We could put this track kind of around it, maybe shift this softball field over and make it work in this area. Either way, we said, hey, one would fit at Holland without a problem. That was in June of 15.
And the big difference here, you got about 35 acres plus or minus in Newtown. You got about 62 acres at Holland.
Doug,
There's a lot more room to play.
the grade, a lot of that property is not flat.
Right, so this was in 15, so we revised that location when we were asked to look at it again.
Okay.
Because now we're a year later, we have a lot more
It's just not
development
flat,
of the
right?
documents and knowledge.
This is from 30,000 feet. Wait till we get.
Okay.
So in October of 15, there was a facilities committee meeting where both architects came and presented to the community to show you what these sites look like. So I want everyone to know that in October of 15, we did show the sites that basically show what these sites look like today, what they were planned to be. So
This was one where we had a meeting, minutes, was it recorded and?
I believe so. We had the architects came and each architect presented their little fly through and showed us what the projects look like. Maybe they didn't go fly through, they might have flat plans at that point. Either way, they came October 15th and presented these plans.
And can I ask about the tennis courts? Because, I never thought about them. When I was the other day bicycling by while school was in session, all this tennis courts were being used by children.
By a PE class.
Yeah, and so I didn't realize that they do get used.
Robert, do we achieve parity then with Holland Middle School?
Well, we don't currently,
There's no.
we don't currently, Holland does not have them.
Well, again, from a programmatic standpoint, are those elements, because tennis is a sport I think people are more likely to play when they're older than lacrosse and football and baseball. So, from that standpoint, if we're interested in encouraging lifelong sports, as we can encourage lifelong learning, I was just curious about the tennis court conversation, whether that ever happened with the PE staff.
Well, let's understand that just for clarity, the tennis courts were an artifact of the building having been a high school from 1951 to 1969, or 1954 to 1969. So that's why they were there. That they were used, I applaud the phys ed department, if you have them,
They're there.
for certain, to have them go unused if they're there would be silly. The other middle school we have, which was built as a middle school around 1972 or 76, never had them. It was not part of the program, so they don't have them. But Bill, your answer was, were they consulted? Your question was, were they consulted? I'll leave that to Doug to.
I'm sorry.
Bill's question was the physical education department consulted around the use of the tennis courts?
At that time, Mr. Klein was here. We worked with Tim Long, we worked with Rich Hollihan, with Dan Greenland and Barry Desco, and we had conversations, and it was decided that the tennis courts were not required as part of the PE program. It wasn't based on concerns, budgetary concerns. It wasn't worth $800,000 or whatever it would cost to build new tennis courts. So we were worried about putting money into the building and programmatic spaces within the building at that time versus adding tennis courts.
When you say programmatic, you mean educational?
Well,
It's not just educational.
Huh?
I don't think you're referring to just simply educational. Programmatically is all programs.
I mean, not just
anything in the building,
academics.
Right.
Right.
I mean, so this shows the four fields that we talked about, the two ball fields, shows the removal of tennis courts, and the football field was kind of shifted slightly so that we could provide that space that Terry talked about, just kind of a grass area that kids can move around that finish wherever that striped football field ends up. Use that corner to have that path around the field. Right now it's grass, just like it is today.
Well, the kids need someplace to stand when we're not in the game, too.
Right, it serves for all those things. Yeah. So at the same October meeting, we showed what the Holland Middle School site looked like again, and it shows the two fields, the football field, the ability to put a field in the grass area over on the side, and the fields that already live here.
And the great things are preserved woodlands. Not
Yes.
preserved, but
Yeah, these are existing.
remaining
Existing fields, yeah. So then, when the question was revisited this year, May, June, I went to Dewey and asked Terry, they worked together, and we said, hey, this really just, as we talked about, doesn't work down the bottom. Up in the top is the only real possible location, but it will require retaining walls, it will require all the things we just talked about on the other drawing. Same thing was looked at, again, May of 16, last month. And this time we said, hey, the track does work a little bit better turn east to west on the site, as you mentioned.
You're gonna still have to regrade.
We'd have obviously a little regrading, we'd have, some carving into these tree lines a bit, and the baseball field would have to shift to the south to provide room for this, because we have an embankment here, similar to Newtown. Right now, that embankment will come in, and the other grass field is below it, so this would require a little bit wider area and the moving of that field.
What does that do to your storm retention digging that you're doing underneath there?
We
We're
would-
actually just below it,
The storm retention is right above the pond there.
right in
We
here.
would have to potentially supplement that with some additional pipes or facilities.
Yeah, there might maybe something.
Because we are adding some impervious surface.
So in May of June of 15, when we said, let's take a look at these things, there were numbers kind of connected to those. It was, around, I'll say 1.2 million. Assuming that if you tried to put this thing in at Newtown Middle, 1.2 would have been as part of the construction cost of the original bid. Because at that time, we still would have had time to manage it in that fashion. Holland Middle School, same time frame, around the same price, but it excludes the cost to shift that ball field down. That would be an additional, probably $200,000 to move the field.
Because it will need to be regraded as well.
Yes. Then, the April, May kind of discussions this year, the same schemes were looked at. You're closer to 1.4 million. That excludes modification for Newtown. That excludes modifications for work they're doing today. So they're working away based on the plan that they have, that they bid, that they're working on. If we say, let's investigate this, let's go, whatever work has to be undone or modified has to be looked at in terms of impact of cost, as well as we have some money in there for retaining walls and some of those other things. The extent of that would have to be investigated. We did put some money in the budget for knowing we need some of those things, so for some of those additional items. Holland Middle School, around the same number, excludes relocation of the baseball field, but of the two projects, Holland is the place where a track goes with a lot less headaches and friction than Newtown would be.
So that's another 300,000, you said, to
200.
200,000.
So considerations, they're just listed. And again, I'm not for or against, I'm just here to give you the information that you need to make a decision. So this is just information as it popped out of my head, and I talked to Terry and whatever we talked about together. I want to say that, the 15, of the May 16 estimate probable cost does include, they're based on synthetic tracks with paved D areas. The D area is that piece of internal track that is shaped like a D at each end. One's backwards, one's a D. Coming straight down and considering those paved, they can do other track events in those areas. They become more functional spaces.
That would be typically where you're running events, because you may also end up building a pit there.
High jump,
I would
right?
say you typically build a pit in that space, or a
You
place to
might.
hold
Yeah.
the base of the pole vault or something.
Sometimes that area is just paved asphalt, other times it's synthetic surface.
Sometimes it's grass.
At our school, at Snyder Stadium, I know for the rock end of it is certainly rubber. Is it rubber at the other end as well?
There's grass at the one end.
There's grass at the graduation.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's it look like it's set?
What is
What,
that?
what does the track look like it's set?
The track is nice. It's a
No, but
nice.
are they both?
The D area.
those are-
Grass,
I think it's grass.
Yeah. They do pull body closest to the school.
Yeah.
You have one,
One has a piece.
so your 1D has your high jump and two long jump pits, and the other side has one long jump pit, which is in not so good shape, and then pole vault. So that is, other than the runways, yeah.
So my point to this is, if you're looking to reduce the numbers, say, hey, what can you do? Based on what I would recommend for a track, I'd recommend a synthetic track, because it's We're looking for the right solution, so the right thing to do is a synthetic track. If you wanted to try to save some money, you could make those grass, and you could carve out about $190,000 from each project to make it grass. The estimates are based on the 6-lane PIAA compliant track, not even an 8-lane. It's the minimal number of lanes you would put on the track. We talked about the real possible location for a running track at Newtown. The most friendly location is the northwest corner. It does compromise the baseball field and 2 other athletic fields by putting it there. Newtown Middle School site is not a track-friendly site due to building setbacks, existing features, grading, needed variances, approvals by the township, conservation district, and Tyler State Park. But Tyler State Park definitely adds a little bit of a twist to it. It would require a variance for the setback dimensions, as Terry mentioned, 200 feet for fields, 500 for lighting. I don't think that's even an issue, but 200 is the number we have to work with. Holland Middle School site provides an area outside of the current construction area that lends itself to a more friendly location, could almost be addressed separate from what we're doing today. If you said, hey, let's consider it, let's do our own project and go for an approval on it, you could almost pull it down and address the drainage as part of its own project and call it its own.
Newtown,
Newtown, definitely not. Holland site will allow for a PIAA compliant track. The Holland site will require the relocation of the ball field, which I talked about, which is about $200,000. Addition of a running track at either location, believe it or not, is about an 8-month process from the day you say go. There's documentation, design team.
That's before you break ground.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, that's before we go out to bid even.
Okay.
We have to get the approvals before we can go out near the end of it if we see that things are looking favorable, and then make sure we extend it enough.
How does that relate to the work we're doing now? So is that?
Not as concerning as Holland, because it's down away from things.
Holland is kind of an addition to the site work that we're currently doing.
Because it's at the bottom, kind of an undisturbed area, if you will. But at Newtown,
It's right in the middle.
if I knew today that we were doing it, I'd probably sit down with the contractor, the architect and Terry and say, what can we do to minimize doing work we may have to undo if we put this track here?
So
But not knowing that, I really can't tell them, oh, you guys need to slow
at
down.
Newtown, there's a potential that it would interfere with the construction. It's a potential.
If you were to bid it by a separate contractor, it would definitely be a risk of interfering with somebody else's work. If you go to them and say, give us a proposal as a change order to your contract.
And that's the difficult part. And there was some discussion at the table about, well, if we had known then what we know now. And I'll tell you, when we built South, we had some consideration. There had been some lobbying for and some consideration about building a small theater. And so those of you who know South, it's at the science and art end, where the building, well, it has 2 legs that stick out. There's nothing between the legs. That was where the little theater was going to be. And it backs on the big theater. And so we put it, because there was some thought about what would it do to the budget, we put it as what was called ad alternate, which said, let's get a price for it, we build it into the plans, and when we get the numbers, we'll either go include the theater or not include the theater, but we have the bids were cut both ways. I don't remember if it came in at $750,000 or $500,000, I think it was $750,000. And the board at that time said, no, we're not going to do it. But we did it that way because if we came back and said, let's consider what we're going to build, let's build it now, it would have been $1.25 million to build it. Because you can't, because at that point, in the middle of the construction project, an enclosed construction project, we would have had to use we would have had to use the people who were already there. And it's like anything, they're already on the site, where's their incentive to give you any discount? There's none. So now, if you're telling me, and we'll hear more, but if you're telling me that you're looking at something that says, hey, you know what, there's a $200,000 difference here, that you could repair the Holland site for $200,000 more, leaving space to do a later add of a middle school track or a track, that's potential, because then, as you said, it might be a separate project later on. There might be, as he spoke to, $200,000 of changing some drainage to accommodate something. I understand that. To decide to build the track at this point, it's a big number, and that, just because we have the construction now, I wouldn't personally want this construction crew in there because I got all these trucks moving around. This guy interferes with that guy, and suddenly I've got the blade claims. So for what I've seen to this point, and I'm willing to listen to other people talk, to this point, Newtown seems kind of unworkable to me. This sounds interesting if there's a $200,000 increment that says we reserve the right to do it later as time permits, but we still keep the school on plan. So that's just, I'm open to listening to lots of things, but that's what I'm taking away from what we've heard so far. Just because.
And I think, to be honest with you, if you were asking me, does it make sense to pay 200 grand to move the field to provide an area for a future track, I would say I would wait and let the site contractor that's doing the track move the field. There's probably some efficiency in him doing all that at one time, and just letting it be its own standalone project later. What we're doing with our project today is putting a new backstop on it and addressing the infield mix.
So you're saying that 200,000 isn't really incrementally, it wouldn't.
It may be a little less if you give it to the guy that's doing a big project. Maybe, I don't know, but
I got you.
I don't know that I would.
It would make sense to do it after you figured out where the track's going to go, so I would hold off. But you could, if you made the decision, we're gonna go ahead with the track there, you could save a little money and say, give me a credit for the minor improvements we were doing to the baseball field. They would do new fences and benches, but that's not.
It's trivial.
It's probably
150,000
not
top.
Not even, so.
Yeah. Almost finished. The running tracks will not likely delay the opening of either middle school, but would delay the completion of site work. So that would, certainly affect us in some way. More so at Newtown and Holland, I think, because we'd be affecting every field in that corner of the site. The middle school, at the Holland Middle School, will require similar agency approvals as Newtown, but because it requires fewer modifications, the approval process is just simplified a bit, because you're not dealing with the same challenges you are at the other site. And lastly, based on the current numbers, I know we talked about how many kids use these tracks, assuming that you would be sending equal kids from each middle school to the high schools, and you balance these buildings before they're open, it'd be about 130 to 140 participants in each of the two middle schools, based on numbers today, that would use the tracks, just so we understand.
I don't understand that at all.
So my point is, if you take the number of kids in track at Richboro, the number of kids in track at Holland, the number of kids in track at Newtown, you add them up, divide them by 2.
I'll say this, it doesn't go with my way of thinking, but I'll say it's probably low, because if you had an attractive offering, it would increase the number. So I'll give that.
So it might increase it
concede that.
consistently in
Correct.
both schools, so
Correct.
your starting point's 130 to 140 in each school,
I would just say it would be higher if you had the attractive.
so maybe it goes higher.
I also think that's a little low anyway. I don't know the exact numbers, but that would suggest that combined across middle schools, you have 260 to 280 participants. And I could be wrong, but I had heard anecdotally that each of the 3 middle schools had over 100, and actually well over 100 is what I
I
thought.
have the numbers, actually. So Barry looked into this for us. Holland Middle School has 74. Newtown Middle School has 95. And Richboro Middle School said they're up about 25 kids this year. They think it's an anomaly. They've never had that little bump, but it's at 110 for Richboro Middle.
Okay, I knew what Richboro was, and I assumed that they
Yes, you
were
were
all
right.
to be the same.
You're right about that, yeah.
15.
Hmm?
That's
Well,
what was,
Mr. Desco gave me those numbers. I could ask him. So those are basically, the considerations that kind of come out of our heads as we look at these things, lastly being the construction challenge. So really, I guess I would, look to the board and say, what's to be considered? Because the next step, if you said, well, Doug, what would you do next if you were authorized, would be to engage the design team to put together preliminary drawings to then go to the township for a preliminary sketch review and say, hey, Northampton, hey, Newtown, we're considering adding these to our projects. And then we learn from them, maybe more of a list of things that we have to deal with if we were to consider doing those projects. But certainly there's cost associated with that then by moving to the design team to go to that next step, so.
Well, at this point, I thought we'd let the public give their opinion.
Can I ask a question, one more question, I'm sorry? And it's probably not the appropriate time, but how do we determine the use? Is that just building by building in terms of the facilities use? I mean, in terms of who has access to the track, when they have access to the track, are the ADs at the middle schools looking, I mean, at the high schools, working with the folks at the middle school to talk about use and sharing? Are there ways that we could, at the very least, do a better job of sharing and providing space? If there's nothing that changes at Newtown Middle, can we take a look at doing a better job of making sure those kids have more time?
So I'll try to answer this the best that I can, but the ADs are certainly helpful in these discussions. And Pauline, for outside facility use, would be helpful as well. She does a really good job managing how outside groups use our fields and track. I know that North has their own events at their track and home events on their turf field. I also know that South comes over to North and has some slots that utilize the track and field as well. So I think because South and North are both utilizing, it compromises the ability for Newtown Middle School to go over and use it. So if there was some way to alleviate.
Why does South use that?
That was my question.
I'm sorry?
Why does South use that?
For
Because
some,
it's a stadium.
for stadium for home events, but they don't have the ability for some
Most high
events.
schools have a stadium.
Yes,
South
they
doesn't
do.
have a stadium, so they go to North, but certainly, you could, I mean, they can walk, I guess, I don't know if they walk from Newtown Middle over to North, so yeah, we have to talk about busing. But if South's over there, then nobody's at South, like, somewhere there's a track that's free. If we're just talking about an actual facility, but if your question mark is why, because it's a stadium
That
and
makes sense.
high school kids wanna go to stadiums.
The other thing which you need to add to each of these plans, which you have not added, is the facility for storing the equipment that goes on the track. North is a messed up situation because we're storing stuff in trailers. South, we're storing stuff in a building that was $60,000 to build. It's an unheated garage with $60,000 to build that.
I'm not asking for a storage building, man.
Well, I'm just telling you,
Can't we
but
go
you
to the
know
local
what?
store and buy like
But you know what?
300
I hear you.
together?
Somebody wanted a pole barn. Someone wanted a pole barn, but my point is, because you have the assets there.
$60,000.
So you need the fence around it, right? We have a fence around it. I don't know if the fence was included, because you need a fence around it. Because otherwise,
I mean,
stuff leaves.
right now, they don't have outbuildings at either middle school site.
They're not storing the track.
The hurdles, the cones.
So, yeah, so if we were to add tracks, then yeah, there would be something
Okay,
needed. You're right, it's not,
wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
Go to pole barn for storage.
We could. A former board member will come back and
Another good
supervise
job.
that.
he doesn't know anything about that.
All right, so we wanted to have an opportunity for public to have comment about it. So I think is that okay? We'll go with that.
Yes.
We're not going to straight on the 3 minutes, but that's why we're here. We'll be respectful of it. Who wants to start? Who's hiding behind the way?
I don't know if it's possible.
Help me know who you
No,
are,
Mary
because
Beth
we're
Lee,
recording it.
Newtown Township.
If you sit up here, actually, just do me a favor, I know it sounds silly. If you'd sit up, just because we record these today, it's, I want to make sure you're heard. You came to speak to us, so.
You're not on camera.
Yeah.
I don't know, is it possible to put this picture back up?
Sure,
Actually, I think you want the first
Well,
slide.
on this one, I just want to know, this is very untechnical. But you see the track that's down the bottom there, the other one?
Yeah.
Is there any way that can just kind of be tweaked like that and the parking area reconfigured a little bit?
A little bit.
See, it's easy if I just go like this.
We
Yeah.
We're gonna send you to the supervisors and say that.
Yeah, just go like, I mean, like I said, you know, the parking might have to be reconfigured, but I don't know if that would
Well,
ease.
the issue is that we don't physically have enough length from left to right to fit that track in that space. Because like I explained before, the driveway out to Ridgeboro Road really can't move as close to Tyler Park.
It actually gets worse if you lower the left side down.
She's asking to skew the track and take what would be our left side
Yeah,
here
it's like
and
diagonal.
push it up into the parking.
We have an internal drive
The other
that runs, there's
Left side down.
an internal drive that runs right here that would be compromised. I mean, if you move this anywhere up in here, it starts to affect parking counts, internal drive, and we have minimum.
Right, and we
parking.
couldn't pick up parking anywhere else.
When you turn it down, you can.
You can't,
It's an empty space.
You cannot.
you can't bring it to that buffer.
It gets narrower as you go further south.
This is a steep embankment right here. It's
And
really
that
steep.
comes
This
down.
But you
has-
could get parking like in
One
here.
parking
Can only go up.
That's also a steep embankment coming from the road and going down.
If you look at
You see where it gets very green, all those green lines? The more green lines, the steeper it is.
the green lines are actually elevation changes. They're topographic. Are you on a 2-foot gradient or a 3-foot?
These are 1 foot.
These are 1-foot gradients?
So you can
That's
see
one
when it's
foot.
very.
It's hard to
hear. I'm sorry for me.
Thank you, Mark.
The other thing I wanted to say, I mean, I know it infringes on the baseball field and the soccer field. Now, the field hockey field would be fine because you could just move that up into the
Yeah.
left field of the softball
Well, you
field
can
because they're
see-
never going to be playing at the same time,
You can't,
correct?
this overlaps. So, the soccer field is here.
Right, but
We
see
cut
the
the
field
end of the
hockey?
soccer field off by 50 feet.
Something like that.
Right, but the field hockey is fine, right?
Well,
No,
that gets clipped as
field
well.
hockey gets clipped as
Yeah,
well.
but couldn't you move that down so part of it is then incorporated into left field of the
There's grading,
softball?
is there
There's
grading?
there's a low point in there.
Yeah, there's grading changes between this field and that field, so as soon as you slide it down.
And what this sketch, and that's all this is, does not show is the grading that's involved, you know, because you see,
Oh,
it shows
okay.
where the track just cuts a tiny corner of field hockey field. Now, maybe we could do what you're talking about, but we can't just have the track right next to the corner. There's have to be a certain space between that, and there's a grade difference here we've talked about before. If you see Doug to the left of field hockey, see those heavy green lines there up going vertically?
Yeah.
That indicates a steep bank. So we'd have to deal with that elevation difference.
Just like
5 or
sliding
6
it this
feet.
way?
Nothing can just, it's not as,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
it
just,
sounds
we
easy.
have to deal with the vertical as well as the horizontal, and this, you can't really see.
So in between, like where left field ends on the softball field and the
Yeah.
field hockey field begins, there's grading issues there. Is that what you're saying?
This whole site is sloped in this direction to bring water down into this basin. This is a low point, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so the site is graded to this kind of V shape.
And there's a
Allow water to get down
little
into this area.
channel, almost a drainage swale in the wooded area that we have to direct that water to.
Okay.
So it's challenging to see, especially because the sketch is hard to read, but there are vertical issues as well as horizontal issues.
Yeah, okay. I understand that the best scenario would be to have the track in that left corner. If it can't be done because of all the variances needed and having to work with the conservatories or whatever else has to be done, if it definitely cannot be done at Newtown Middle, I would love to see at least Holland get it and maybe be able to work out some kind of a schedule where, you know, they can kind of share it for practices and things like that. I think the money would be well spent. I know everybody wants to talk about parity, but let's face it, you know, I think it was a mistake not building the stadium at South years ago, because if it's not done then, it never gets done. They also don't have a pool down there. So I'd love to see at least Holland Middle get a track and maybe, you know, work out some kind of a schedule where Newtown Middle, you know, can go down and use it in practice, you know, and things like that, because I'd hate to see this opportunity pass, because if it doesn't get done now, it's never gonna get done. And I think I would have loved to have seen the track coaches and the PE teachers weigh in on this in the beginning. I think that would have been a great idea. And putting a track down also at Holland, you have Hillcrest right next to it. I could see the PE teacher from there bringing kids over, possibly during the day to use it. So I would just hate to see this opportunity go by and no tracks be built. I'd love to see both of them, but, you know, I'm okay with one if we can't have two. And the other thing I did want to point out, there have been, you know, injuries at Newtown Middle, you know, twisted ankles and things like that with the kids running on the. It's very hard for the track coaches to even explain to the kids that running into track and, you know, and handing the batons, because when they're running around a football team, half the time there's no lanes, so they don't even know where, you know, they're going. And it's a shame that they do have to have every meet. They have to travel, they have to, you know, miss 9, 10, 11, whatever their last period is, you know, to
All in the
travel.
same working period too.
So if we can't have two, I would love to see at least Holland Middle get a track.
Can you say who you are, where you're from?
Oh, Mary Beth Dugan, Newtown Township.
Thank you.
How much would a stadium in South cost?
$3 million.
I was gonna ask that same question.
So,
You know, right off the top.
Hey, Doug, think outside the box. If you got a better idea, I mean, you've been, you know, you're allowed to have ideas.
so you asked about, I mean, this is just my head. And I know we talked about parity and things. So I know we have a stadium at North.
We do.
We do.
With turf field.
With a turf.
Oh, don't bring that up.
At South, we have a nice track with a grass football field in the middle, but we don't have the bleachers, we don't have the turf. We don't have the facilities for home events at South. So as I look at all this and I think more about it, what I start to look at, you ask the price of a stadium at South, it's probably in the range when you look at bleachers, if you looked at turf, if you looked at lights, if you looked at power for the lights, ADA accessibility, fencing, flagpole, all the things you need to do. It's in the $3 million range, 3 to 3.5.
How much of that is turf?
The turf's usually around $1 million to 1.2.
We don't have to do turf.
So if you didn't do
So if
turf,
you didn't do turf, people always think turf fields are $600,000 because that's what they hear.
because that's what we all heard for years.
Turf fields are only 600,000. That's true. The turf field is, but the under
But
drainage,
everything else you have to
the
do.
stone, removing all the spoils and preparing it for the under drainage is another $500,000. So when you put that in, plus the $600,000 turf, you're at 1.1 to 1.2. And then when you do that, then you put a fence around it, and then somebody says, well, why not put a flagpole in?
Doug, I have to tell you respectfully, you're low, because once you build the stadium, this was our problem at North. Once we had the stadium, then we got into, we were pre-existing and we didn't need restrooms. Because the restrooms, just so we're clear, the restrooms at North are not for the stadium. The restrooms at North are for the snack shack.
So what I know about this is that, and I can confirm, that if you have toilet facilities within a school that are, I think, within 500 feet of 300 of the stadium, then you don't have to have public restrooms.
I wish we had known that then, but that was, we were told.
That is the code.
Okay, I'm good for that.
I really believe my 3 to 3.5 is right on the money.
That's just 3.5 million.
I'll take a nickel, I'm really honestly.
We could have.
At any rate, so what I'm saying, so here's the rest of my thought, and I'll finish quickly. So you need to get athletic directors involved in my thinking, and you need to get the appropriate people involved. This is just me without getting the right people in the room to talk about it. But if you have South using North, and you were to free up the use from South at North, and South use South and North use North, can I now get some Newtown Middle using North? And can I get Holland
Using South.
using South?
And it's
And
going
then
a
we have-
little way to remedy.
Now you have parity between the two high schools. You have parity with the middle schools, and you have a project that's its own standalone project, and maybe you can do some, I know this is bad fundraising to apply towards that project. I know that may have gone south in the past, but.
No, it was
Kind of.
But
Same thing, I think.
it seems to me like there could be opportunities there. I know that we've been approached by outside groups that would love to put a turf field at South and wanted our, endorsement if they went out to fundraise. If they raised enough, then they built. And said, well, you'd have to raise every single cent of it to build.
And then they would use it non-Holland Middle School.
Let's,
Again, the way it's structured, the way it's scheduled, how we establish those scheduling would be entirely up to us from the get-go. So that's just something that pops into my head. If there's thought about it, then you leave the middle schools be, they can feed to the high schools that they would eventually go to. And maybe
And you
there's
can fix
something
the thing that you said we never fixed, which is South. Yeah.
that's
All right.
just,
Can I just
let's-
get a clarification, are you saying that you would build a stadium and reset South to be equal to North, but there wouldn't be a track at either of the middle schools?
Yes.
So they would not build it?
So we would not build,
Okay.
so the money that you would use to build the tracks at the two
You wouldn't
middle
have done
schools would be used to finish the stadium piece at South and have parity between the two high schools. Then the middle schools would feed to those for their home events if the ADs, athletic directors, agree, that is possible.
In my opinion, if
Mrs.
that's
Carroll,
not-
let's let Mr. Taylor speak for Mr. Taylor.
In the context of what you're saying, if that's what, then we would probably set some policy that said, this is just a conversation.
This is
but
that's all it is.
In my opinion, if the goal is to allow the middle school to have track, then we would, in the effort of doing this, have to say high school track first and middle school track second and everybody else in the world after that. If that's the conditions under which we're moving forward. So we'd have to be very clear of that, because sometimes we have well-intended things that we plan out thinking something's gonna happen, and another board sits here 10 years later, and nobody even knows that that was the intention.
Doug, did your estimate include lighting?
Yes.
That $500,000 lighting is in your $3.5 million? Okay. Somebody else have public comment? Just please, because we're on the mics. Just introduce yourself by name and township and then.
I'm here almost every month now. My name is Brittany Zone. I'm a parent of kids at Churchville and South. Soon to be, my Churchville kid is going to be at Holland. Unfortunately, he'll miss all of this excitement of a finished school or possible track. But really, the first reason I came here tonight, I wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to the entire CR community, staff, administrators, teachers, maintenance, that I've dealt with my facility requests. And so they've seen my name much more often than you've seen my name in the times that I have coordinated science fairs, youth track, and field events and meets and practice and charity events. And so I really appreciate all they've done for me and my organizations that I represent. And most recently, the CR staff went above and beyond when they helped us coordinate the move of the entire Relay for Life that was supposed to be held at the CR South track. And within 2 days before the event, we realized that we were going to be completely washed out, rained out, and they enabled us to move it inside. That was a Herculean effort, and everybody pulled, and the event was fantastic. So I really appreciate everybody's efforts, and I just wanted to express how much we as organizations in our community appreciates the ability to use these facilities that are in our township. And yes, that brings me back to track. I've been a youth track coach for 7 years as part of the St. Bede's CYO program. I love track. But my kids do play other sports, I've played other sports. But the beautiful thing about track, and I'm so sad that I was not somehow enlightened a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when these discussions first surfaced. But having coached kids from first grade through 8th grade, it's amazing to see their growth and the ability to take almost any kid off the street and that says, oh, I don't run. I'm like, well, I don't run either. But track is just more than running, and they come into their own, which they may not be able to do on the soccer field or the football field or the baseball field. And just seeing the numbers here, we're talking about 300 kids or more that are running, or maybe want to run or throw or jump at our middle school level, and they're on grass fields with divots and ruts and no proper jumping pit and so on. I feel that's a shame, because in comparison, how many, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but how many kids are on that baseball field at any one time? And is that baseball field, would that be utilized as much as a track? So I certainly don't want to take away our kids' baseball field or softball field, but I want to just make certain that we give kids that may not ever step into a sports program the opportunity to be part of a sport that is a non-cut sport that really promotes the individual improvement, whether you're the last kid or the star of the team. And I think our coaches at the middle school, at least that's what I've experienced, do a fantastic job of encouraging every kid that walks through the door, even pulling them, say, hey, buddy, if you're gonna get cut from baseball, softball, come see me. It's halfway through the tryouts, come see me. I want you to run for me. I want you to jump for me. Let's give throwing a try. And so obviously I'm passionate about this. I have no idea about the finances. And I just hope that we would consider something like this, where we can also potentially start a youth track program, for the community and not just for our Catholic kids. Because I've had to turn away so many kids that wanted to run. So I'm sorry, buddy. You want to, become Catholic, you can run for me. But so that being said, the idea of having a stadium at South is, that's pretty sexy, but it doesn't solve the problem of not having a track at Holland, because as it is, I know for a fact at South that track is in very high demand with St. Andrews CYO, who has been kicked off of North's track, and St. Bede's CYO, the high school boys, the high school girls, and that's a very, very heavily used track, and it's very busy, and I think we're getting probably every cent worth out of that track. And that leaves, unfortunately, the middle school kids kind of hanging. So those are my 2 cents worth. I hope that keeps, I wish, as I said, I wish I would have known a little more about this a couple of years ago, but I hope you do consider those points.
Do the Catholic schools have tracks?
St. Bede's has has a small cinder track.
That's not for competitions, right?
Oh gosh, no. And I as a coach and parent wouldn't want my kids running on it, because it becomes just one big pothole after another because it's cinder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any thought of one of these Catholic schools building their own track?
Not that I'm aware. Yeah, we've looked into using George School, but there's really no parking at George School, and they do also use their track very heavily. So because it's the same season,
Where do you do track then?
So I mean, the St. Bede's and St. Andrews CYO program is at South, and there's a very wonderful collaboration between the coaches and CR South with Buff, and we work out the schedule and we make it work, and it's wonderful that we're able to use it. And We have the jumping pits and the throwing pits and, high jump, long jump, everything available to us. And for CYO, we're very happy that we can use the high jump pit. We don't have to bring our own, but some of the equipment we do bring.
And that's, and I'm not looking to charge or to change the way stuff. Is there a fee charge for this? Does the
Yes.
CYO pay a fee?
Yeah.
And they get the use of the equipment as well, some equipment. Because we don't normally do that, that's.
With the
but-
high jump pit, yes.
Okay. No, I'm not looking to change, I'm just looking to understand, because that's one of the things that figures in.
The high jump pit is out
It's
the
always out, you
entire
can't hide it,
time
yeah, it's
anyways, yeah. And we don't, and there's an agreement that we don't touch the pole vaulting pit, that the kids stay off that equipment. And so, in terms of if you were to look at a track for the middle school, I would highly recommend that you do surface one of the Ds and include a long jump pit and potential for a high jump pit there. There's no pole vaulting in the middle schools, there's no discus and javelin, but there is shot put, which I think again is a relatively simple addition.
Easier if there's no turf.
They don't like it on turf.
No, they don't like it on turf, that's my point.
No.
They have to stage it somewhere else.
No, I'm personally not a turf person, so, but that's more on health aspects than anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll be brief, I know everybody's getting a little antsy. Jillian Ann, Newtown Township. Thank you for presenting what you've just given us, because I think it's been eye-opening on a lot of different levels. I think everybody really didn't have a full grasp of what went into the plans and what has been talked about, and it's been fascinating to sit here. I actually at one point was thinking, let's put 2 tracks in at Holland, because there's plenty of room over there, because I think outside the box, and my win-win would be put a track in at the middle schools if it's possible. If we have to compromise, put a track in at Holland. If we really have to go a different way, build the stadium and feed the middle schools into their appropriate high school track. It covers so many kids and it's so expansive. The highest participation level for track is at the middle school level. It is open to everyone, special ed, children with health issues. I was a track runner because I have asthma, I can't run. But heck, I can do a race walk and I can hurdle because it's a short span of time. This is an opportunity to really give our kids that health and fitness aspect in every way possible. So I don't envy you the conversations that you're gonna have in about 2 minutes, but I just wanna thank you for listening and hearing us and looking at all the other options. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this goes in a good way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I had another petition. It wouldn't be us if we didn't bring you some more signatures of parents that are still in support of running tracks at the middle schools.
Have a seat.
All right. Kevin Campbell, Upper Makefield. I have a 8-year-old daughter who is in the building tonight. She runs track, she loves it, and as a parent, I find her bonding with a lot of her little classmates and her teachers. So unlike my son, who's gonna not have the luxury of participating in maybe what they feel, because he'll be in the high school, I look forward to something. Looking at the numbers, to me, as a parent in the community, I think a Holland is really a no-brainer. I think we have an opportunity in our grasp to give something to the students as well as to the community, because it's not just a track for Council Rock, it becomes part of the community. And there are going to be people that are going to want to use it. Special ed, there's so many different events that you can have on a track. Scary enough, I look back at Facebook and some of my best memories are of track coaches in my high school in New York that maybe I didn't make the team or didn't stay with it, but they were impactful in my life with what I did thereafter. So our coaches and our directors obviously should be in. If you were to ask me, again, Holland, looking at the numbers, the savings, the contingency factors, I think between savings and actual to budget. There's about $8 million if you don't use all the contingency, which we know that would be great, but at the end of the day, we're probably going to use some of that. So Highland, a no-brainer to go forward with it. And I think we could, at Newtown, if we couldn't put an official track in, I would really give consideration to an alternative size. And if you really wanted to go crazy, have we looked at out of the box thinking of doing a platform track, elevated? And I know that would raise costs, but you could possibly go up and have a stadium underneath it. They do it in New York. They have track and field elevated and on top, but realistically, if we had to reduce that footprint and put it in the back, I still think it would be worth the money and start to right some of the sins of the past. And I don't envy you guys.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough, is there anybody else?
Nancy, you start.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Be short and sweet. My name is Betsy Worthen. I'm a community member. My days of having a child involved in track are long gone. But I will say that I think my child was a fairly good example of the success of the track programs within Council Rock School District. Her participation in track is what led her to be admitted to Princeton University. And she was a very successful student, but also a very successful athlete due to her beginnings at track. However, her beginnings at track were at Holland Middle School, where she ran in the parking lot. She ran on very uneven surfaces. They let her try all kinds of events. It was, as a parent, honestly, a little scary because it really was not a safe situation. So I guess that's what I would like to, there's some things that have been talked about, and I don't know if I'll summarize a little bit, but some factors that I think really need to be considered. And needless to say, I'm a very strong supporter of track and field in this community. I think besides the safety factor, besides the issues that have already been talked about in terms of the numbers of kids that are involved in the track program and the openness and acceptance of multiple types of kids into the track program, I would hope that some of the things that you would consider from a cost perspective are, right now you're busing your middle school students out of the district every time they have a track meet. That's got to be a cost. And I'm not saying that there might not still need to be some moving around, even if you choose perhaps to only build a track at Holland or whatever, but you're still talking about busing costs to Bensalem, to Pennsbury, to William Tennant, to places that are not just around the corner. Because of only having, and as we just heard, perhaps I think there's to be considered is that if you have at least one middle school facility, recognizing that perhaps Newtown is not possible, you might save some of the wear and tear on your existing tracks, because tracks do wear out, and at some point they'll need to be replaced. And the fact that South is, that's my home school and was my daughter's home school. South is an extremely busy track. So there are people on there constantly. And I think that is the other factor is this is not just something for Council Rock students. The CYOs use it, community events use it. You can go up to Council Rock South's track at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and there are community members running, walking, and using that facility. I'm not really as familiar with North, need to say. So I think that, I just think that is the other thing to be considered, is right now you have two tracks that are being really seriously used and perhaps even overused. If you could having a middle school track may also give some relief to that, in addition to providing some on-site support and facility for a track program. So that's it. Thanks for your time.
It's up to you.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. There are a couple things said tonight that I don't really understand. Was you made a decision from going from all-purpose fields to dedicated fields. So we have a lot of fields now that we have soccer, field hockey. Fields are not being used for 3/4 or half of the school season because they're only being used for their sport. When they were all-purpose, you could play softball or baseball on the same field, or you could use soccer, hockey. So I don't know why that decision was made, because it pushed track out. When everybody could have had a field if it was all-purpose and not just dedicated, but it pushed track out. Second, you went 200 feet, within 200 feet for the other sports, but you're saying it would be a difficulty to do that for track. Third, in May 5th memo, it was going to be $150,000 to shift the softball, and here a month later, it's $200,000. Second, we had bids, we started demolition before we had approval for land development. And now you're saying that maybe we wouldn't be able to stop before we build. And I know at Newtown, we couldn't even, if we put it where the school was, we wouldn't even be able to start it till demolition. So I don't see how that holds up. Then I'd like to go back to this sketch, and what I prefer would be, this is Green Lane, and it comes in at an angle. I don't know if you can see it on this sketch, but Green Lane comes in on an angle. We own property all the way up. If Green Lane came in and went straight, and the field moved over, there would be enough room for traffic.
Nancy, that was answered by the fellow up here, who
Pardon?
explained that that would require additional permits from PennDOT and would also be not likely to come because the turns off of the bypass, turning right onto this.
It wouldn't change
332.
the entrance.
Yeah,
It would
won't-
change
They won't
it.
allow us to move the entrance of Green Lane.
It wouldn't change the entrance. See
You
how
can't-
it
you can't-
turns
You
in?
can't come in and turn and go out.
What?
If there's not enough room to come in, turn, and then go over. You have to.
You just make it a straight entrance. It turns in this way.
Okay.
Okay.
To see if you look at it. I mean, when I was at my kids were at Newtown Middle, we parked on that space at back to school nights and everything between Green Lane and the fence. So I would like to see if that could be looked at, because Green Lane comes in at an angle, and then it goes up, and then goes back at another angle. And if you came in and just went straight, would there be room? That's my question. Next, if you decide to build a stadium at south, and try to share what you said would be high schools first, middle schools second, that would mean that all the kids at the middle schools would still have to practice and run on grass, which is almost 300 kids. At Richborough, they had, you said 110, I heard 115. That's almost a quarter of the school, because they only have 482 students this year. So it's a big population, and when they combine, it'll be even a bigger population at home, running on grass or trying to find a place to run. 2, there'll be no physical ed opportunities if there's not tracks at the middle schools for the phys ed teacher to go out and do track activities and include that in health and phys ed. 3, I've been told that being on track for a kid helps their transition into the middle school, because a lot of kids join track and they have a sense of belongingness. And the other wonderful thing that makes me come to tears is that those kids clap furiously for the kid who comes in first, and the same as the kid that comes in last. And every one of them is made by their coaches and their teammates to feel as important no matter where they place. And that's what I think is so beautiful about track. Number 4, if you push out the Holland onto South, you're not making room for the rest of the community to use the track itself. Number 5, which is what I just said about them cheering. And also, number 6 is almost every one of our elementary schools has a walking club or a track or something. So they have it at the elementary school, and then they go up to the middle school. They don't have the proper surfaces What does that tell them? How Council Rock feels about what they do. If they have to go to a school, and I have Holland Middle schedule here somewhere, and they go to away games. So their away games are at Player Middle School, has a track. Tohickon has a track. Love College Middle School has a track. Tavernon has a track. Lenape Middle has a track. And Almond, there's a school that begins with AMBI or something in Central Bucks. What is it? Unapri. They have a track. Why does Council Rock so much not value track at its middle schools as the other surrounding school districts? Right?
All right, that's the end of public comment on that. Does the board want to have a discussion about that here? Do you want to take it back and discuss it in a public meeting? Is there any further board comment or discussion about this at this point?
I had a few points I wanted to make. I mean, I know it's getting late, and I think Dr. Fraser has a really important game to be watching.
By all means.
I'm concerned about it.
Plenty fun.
It's just the Stanley Cup.
I'll pitch the end of it.
Pittsburgh
Which
doesn't
should be
have
the
a
best part.
basketball team.
The ending should be the best part.
So I just had three quick things, and I'm not going to try to go at any length about it. I'm just going to bulk on it. So I really appreciate the presentation. Thanks, Terry, for coming. Thanks for the public comment. It's really helpful. Thanks, Mr. Grubb, for the meeting. I think it's a good discussion. St. Bede, St. Andrews, those parents pay taxes too. So, giving them services like tracks, I think is part of running the school district. It's easy to forget that even though folks don't attend our schools, they're part of our community. And in fact, they fund our
Can I just make
Yeah.
one on that? St. Andrews and St. Bede's both have public schools and their kids running in the track program. So it's
Right.
not just the
Okay, no, that
Catholic
is,
schools.
yeah, but even if it was, the parents are paying taxes. We don't do religion very well in our curriculum, so they can't come here. So I personally am for more capacity for tracks, and so a track at Newtown Middle School makes sense to me. At Holland Middle School makes sense to me. The Newtown Middle piece is clearly very complicated. The stadium at South, I'm personally for a stadium at South. I don't know that it will help the tracks, because then what you'll have is collisions between practices and games. So you'll have lacrosse games where now people can use the seating, and so that could push a track practice out, because those collisions, we've been told, are happening at North. So anyway, those are my 3 bullet points.
For me, looking at this, I think Newtown is not, it's a non-starter for me. I just don't think it works on the property. Someone asked about the setbacks. To go through that again, because we talked about that a few moments ago when Terry presented. The setbacks that we've received some permissions around are because the property the configuration that we're putting there is nothing but a painted line on the ground versus an actual construct of impervious surface, which is why the track, with its nature of surface being within 200 feet, would have a potential for a different outcome. So that was a question that was raised. For me, I respect the idea that it might work at Holland. I think I already expressed my thoughts around that. It is interesting to listen to professionals in land development. Well, not land development, but
Yeah, that's right.
that's okay. Land development. I want to make sure I have the right title.
That's good.
And the fellow who's done engineering work and supervision of construction. When I think that maybe it means that you spend the 200 now and push the property back now and say, go with it. And their counsel is, if it were me, and they wouldn't do that. They would go ahead with the plan we have now and consider the track at a time in the future. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing what you both summarized when we
You
talked
could
before.
proceed with that, you're talking Holland, right?
Correct, Holland.
You could proceed with that the design approvals now and tack that on towards the end of the project. Doesn't have to wait till the end, but it could. It could happen in 2 or 3 years.
So-
That's,
Either way, I'd wait to spend the money until we're ready.
So, and that's what I hear. And so, you know, I listened to the fellow who spoke and had to leave. His daughter was actually in the next room saying, you know, we expect to be under budget. Yeah, we do expect to be under budget. And if we don't spend the contingency, then we still have the contingency at the end and we can consider it then. That's just where I come from on the thing. I think, as I say, Newtown, I don't know that we can fit it on there at all. Holland, I'm not adverse to it. I just don't see it right now. I'd rather get the projects we have, a clear slate, let them get the job done, and the incremental cost later. The stadium at North, now you got me saying it, Nancy, the stadium at South, for me, that's a little problematic. There are a couple things at South which are an artifact of when we were working with the township to have the pool. Where the property is located, it terminates at the stadium, at the end of the gym, because that was where the pool was going to be built to abut actually up front to our building. When the pool didn't go forward for the township, we got the property in a swap, which is now where the senior center is, I think. Truthfully, Doug, I have to tell you, part of the reason I say your number's low is there are other defects on that property that if we're going to spend $3.5 million or 4 or 5 million, which is my thought, I think we need to correct them. And here's why. Building the stadium around where that field is right now is in the wrong place. The other thing is that it kills me every time I look at it is the parking lot we built for that school, for the student parking, is ridiculous. It is down the hill. Any event you run other than kids at that school during the day, everybody parks up in the upper parking lot, and that field down there, that parking lot down there is pointless and useless. Truthfully, if we were going to do it, it's a flat space. I'd put the stadium at the bottom of the hill and put parking out at the end on the same level where the pool is going to be, just because that would make that building vibrant for the community to use it, to attend it, and get in and out. Right now, parking there is an abomination. So there are other things to be fixed there. And it's a bigger project. And that's why I say just building the stadium around what we have, it's putting lipstick on a pig. Anyone else for today? Or we'll move on to the rest of this.
I have a question. What's the acre, did you say, what's the acreage at Newtown?
62. Oh, Newtown,
Can you let Doug answer?
35 and Holland's about 62.
And what is the acreage of the house right?
72.
Holland was 60.
That's a nice flat piece of land.
It's a nice flat piece of land. Could have fit a track there, huh?
I think so.
With limited space.
Yeah.
I would like to see this track at Holland Middle. I mean, tonight did nothing but convince me completely that this makes sense, it's completely feasible. And I honestly would like to see it as part of this construction. I'd rather not see it delayed. We cannot speak for future boards and what can happen. If I can have some say in putting a track in there, I'd like to do that, because I think it's possible, not because it's, like, I want my stamp on that. I just think that it is possible. The stadium is a completely separate issue. Would be a great thing, but it obviously needs a lot more conversation. There's a lot more issues, but it doesn't address the issue of bringing a track program to the middle schools. And I so wish, Greg, I certainly wish you were here 2 years ago. Maybe it would have brought more conversation here. I wish we had this conversation long ago too. I can't even believe how much I've been learning just in the last few weeks and how much I've just learned tonight. I had no idea about the extensive use of the CYO programs. So, building a track could become a revenue stream for us. It would enhance what we do at the middle school in terms of the student experience tremendously. The fact that it's the only sport that doesn't get cut, the fact that.
Football too.
Football doesn't cut.
Middle school
Okay,
football
but-
doesn't cut it.
Okay, well, not everyone would choose football like they might track, because track would appeal to students of every ability. And I've heard stories of special ed students, where this is their only option for sport. I'd also like to throw out there that why perhaps we can consider a track with the use of fund balance. We don't have to do additional borrowing and extend our debt. We do not have to do this with any taxpayer burden. We talk about fund balance for one-time expenses, capital things. I can hardly think of something that would be more appropriate. It doesn't even take up a massive, but we still would have plenty of fund balance left. But what a tremendously fantastic use of fund balance this could be. So we still capture the savings of the lower estimates that we received on the project. Again, no added tax burden, to answer the questions of, we cut this and that and taxes, no tax increase, no extended debt. We can do this with a fund balance. I would love to see this move to a discussion, to a board meeting if possible, or whatever, to see if we can engage the board members that aren't here and see if we can move this forward. I think that the time is now for this, for me.
I'm certainly not opposed to a track at Holland necessarily, but I would need to have a broader conversation about, and a better understanding about a stadium. And I would really like more information at some point as to how we're scheduling. And I am certainly not criticizing anybody that is involved in the scheduling, but are we looking at the district? Are the ADs at the high school talking? Are the middle school folks talking? Looking at how much time everybody's getting. I have benefited from my daughter has run track, and she is running track. She just finished her season at the middle school. She's also been a St. Andrews member, and that track at South is great. The lack of bleachers there. I mean, you have parents 6 deep trying to see their kids on at a meet. So to me, it is a decision I would prefer to make in totality with better understanding about other items in this discussion.
So I'd like to say, since we're thinking outside the box, with the Howell property, have you ever seen a school district that has a recreational facility solely? That is, could we put perhaps a track with bleachers and a ball field and some other resources there on that property with the 72 acres that we have, and answer some of these problems. So we're transporting to our own district property. It's unfortunate that we didn't seriously consider that site for the middle school, being that's flat at 72 acres. But that being said, we've already done the excavation here. Just throwing it out there as a discussion.
Personally, with the schools I've been involved with, you're asking me? Or
I'm asking anybody.
Okay.
But listen, we need, so we're trying to answer a problem. Whether you get 5 votes to move forward to spend the money or not, we're trying to solve an issue. The issue being that doesn't fit. Newtown Middle School doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Holland does, right? If we want to spend the money. But you still have the northern end of the district without adequate facilities. I'm hearing North really doesn't have adequate facilities to cover the needs. And South is just kind of getting by. If we took 72 acres and we built a recreational use facility, different ball fields, tracks, whatever we need there, I'd like to know what that would look like and what it would cost. I don't know. Maybe that's
one thing that I could say, if you would want to put some athletic fields on the house track, that you do a master plan for your future. That was bought back in the mid-90s for future growth that never happened at the time. But you want to consider, hey, you're still going to have some growth in the future, right? So plan it. Say, okay, that school might go here. It's be about this big. Maybe it's another middle school. I don't know.
For me,
And work the fields around it if you want to use them.
for me, the problem with it is, I look at Newtown Township, they went, they spent their, we're gonna build all this veterans. They didn't build a track either, and that's a community resource. They didn't build it either. To the point that's being made, I wouldn't be supportive of building the house track up to be a recreational facility. One, it doesn't solve our transportation problem. Two, it does mean we would have to create parking for all of the people who would want to use that facility. And we'd probably have to make some other improvements to it. So suddenly I'm in the development process. I don't even know how much Northampton spent. I'm looking at Northampton because they had that property from the Navy or whatever it was at the time, Air Force Navy. That was not a small thing to develop either, between fields and they didn't build a track either, as I recall, to run on at that public field. So I'm not jumping. The other house track has limited access to it. There are 3 properties in the way of it right now. We did have an issue when we looked at doing it originally about PennDOT supervision and tie into that road to make access to and from that road. It's I don't know if it's slopes, Nancy, but it's problematic to use it like that. I appreciate, Terry, that the notion that just throwing fields on there without a master plan would be, first of all, a non-starter from the township. But would we have a track? Would we have to have bathroom facilities there? There's no water or sewer to that property at this point. So we'd have to start doing that. For me, numbers are just growing too fast. I appreciate the out of the box thinking, and not to be negative Nancy here, or negative person here, but that's just it's not going to work. It's not even negative.
So I'm in the middle of that, so I get it. The master planning piece I get. And Upper Dublin has something similar to that, but it's adjacent to their high school, but they benefit by a couple turf fields that are community use, and the high school gets to use them, so it really works out well. It's kind of a shared thing. It'd be great if that were adjacent to a school, then, like you said, then you could share it, and it's a good thought in my mind, but
I think I've been pretty obvious in my opinion, but I'll make comments in case people didn't hear me at the board meeting or whatever. So I think track is a tremendous sport. And I think we've heard the success of it without tracks. It's got 110 kids in it, and there's no track at Richboro Middle. So for me, I don't need a track to attract the kids, but I think it's a tremendously positive sport. There is nothing about what will be my lack of support for building a track that is against the sport, the integrity of it, what it does, that it makes lifelong learners. I would just say, for me, those things are happening now and have happened for years. It was said, what are we saying to the kids? Are we somehow saying something to them? I would completely potentially agree with that statement. If we had one now, we took it away. That's a bad message. They don't have it now. Should we have added it? Potentially, but for me, it does impact taxpayers. Absolutely. We are going to be $2 million down in our fund balance from 29 to 27. We use 6.5 of that. We'll be down to 22. If we use that, that's no money next year for summer projects. If we want to do it instead of a summer project, again, I would be open to that because I feel like that's money the district would spend anyway. Sorry, Doug. What are we saying to our students when we have high school students using 20-year-old math books? What are we saying to our students when we have no new 6th grade reading books? What are we saying to our students when we have no STEM specialists? So $1.3 million for a tract could fund a STEM specialist for 6 years. I know I have the big, and I'm alone, I got it, so this isn't going to go anywhere, but that's a recurring expense, and this is a one-time expense, got that whole argument, but I am continued to be in significant pain over the academic cuts that I think impact academics every day in this district, and I look at our test scores, and I look at where we're going, and if I'm spending $1.3 million, it's going to be in those classrooms, helping those kids academically. That's the same opinion I've had. I feel like that has somehow come out to some people who I have communicated with. This is not for me against track. I think sports is critical to a student. Sports or clubs or band are critical to student development. I was one of the people screaming when we cut off the 5 o'clock buses. I think it's central to public education, but I can't spend another $1.3 million on this topic. If we want to talk about saying, here's the money we're spending on academic fields, let's sit with the athletic people and decide how we can spend that same money in a way that allows us to have a track, have at it. For me, it's strictly about voting to spend more money. Not that that thing isn't valuable, but frankly, STEM is valuable. New textbooks is valuable. And my main charge is academics. And I am thrilled that we came in under budget because I'm hoping that means we can put some money back in the classroom. And that's my only issue. So I know it's probably not you guys, but anyone who's misconstruing that I somehow am just morally against tracks, come talk to me. I had kids who played sports in Council Rock the whole time. Sports are awesome. And track in particular is a great sport because I do think a lot of kids who maybe don't think their traditional sports end up in having a great, successful career there. But it is, unfortunately for me, at this point, a money thing. Sorry.
No, I'm not going to disagree with anything. You're not alone. I'm not going to disagree with anything Wendy said. I'm not morally opposed to tracks either, but I am morally opposed to amplifying the lack of parity yet again. I'm a no on this until we correct the parity at the high schools. And I'm not going to do anything that we don't have mirror images of at both these middle schools. I'm just not. We are living with South being not the same as North, and we have been, and we've been living with it long enough. People think it's okay. I don't. And so I'm not. You want to spend this money, although I'd like to see it spent in the classrooms, or not spend it all. It's got to go to clean up South, not to make another school that's not parity with this system. So that's where I'm at.
At one point, I publicly said that I wanted it at both schools or no schools. And I have to tell you, at the last meeting when you said that you didn't want to track until you basically said what you said now, I basically said that, and it gave me pause because, or even the same thing that what you're saying, to hold these incredibly valuable things hostage because of something else, when we are primed in this moment to do it in a way that we couldn't do it otherwise, has made me rethink my position on that. Do I dislike that we don't have a stadium at South? No brainer. Do I wish we had the pool? Of course. Do I wish that we kept the STEM specialists, bought the books, have math specialists? Yes, of course. But we don't have the resources to do all of those things now in a way that we can do this track now. It's not like this random thing. In the future, this is our wish list, and let's do this, this, and this, and what's the most important. It's a timing thing. It's a moment thing. With the construction of these schools, with everything that we're going to do, with the merging of populations, with the introduction of new things that may be in the program, we're talking about, maybe exploratory nights, examining this. This is the moment. And so I respect the position of those things because I think those things, and I've stated those things in the past. But hearing it anew just made me realize, like, I cannot hold hostage the things that I'm so principled on because you lose an opportunity to seize something like this where I think this is the moment for a track, certainly at Holland Middle. I will admit that Newtown Middle is less clear. I would love to hear just the feedback of whether or not a smaller size track has any benefit, but even that would be a separate issue. To me, the track at Holland Middle School would create some parity because I do believe that both middle schools could use it for the first time ever. We could have meets here, which promotes something entirely different in the community and revenue streams. So yeah, all those other things are important, but it doesn't mean you sacrifice seizing your moment for something that you may not get again.
Excuse us. I don't necessarily agree with all aspects. For me, to be very clear. The moment, I don't necessarily agree that it's the moment. And that's, so, you know, I can agree with the notion. I think I've come to the notion that I could understand and I could agree with it. For me, it's just timing. I don't want to put too many eggs in the basket at the same time. I do hear, you know, I worry about future years. I worry about using the fund balance. It's a good argument to say that we have fund balance.
Obviously, pending further discussion with
But-
Bob and everything
So what I'm gonna
forecasted,
put it to at this point is, we do have two other board members who are not with us tonight because they are out of town. So I looked at Robert at one point and I mouthed the word board meeting and Robert goes, of course. So I think it will be a topic that we'll bring back. We'll make it as a topic. I think we gave it a due notice. I think there's really no confusing the notion. I look at the public when I says, there have been some compelling things said tonight. Truthfully, the compelling things, I have to give credit where credit is due, came more from Terry, because he explained some of the practical aspects of it. You made the compelling things for the cause. Terry made some compelling understanding about the practical aspect. And we'll look to revisit it. We will ask our two board members, Ed and Andy, to watch the meeting tonight so they are fully informed of what we saw. And we'll bring it forward at another board meeting. It's the best we can do at this point, because I don't think there's certainly not a quorum here. There's a quorum here, but there's certainly not 5 votes to make anything happen in a positive sense here tonight. That's my impression.
I don't know if you know that or not. I guess you do. You're pretty solid.
Well,
I want to thank you for putting it on the agenda. I know it's a bit of a struggle, but it's good to have this. I think we did get a lot of great information tonight, and I want to thank you for adding that to the agenda. I look forward to talking about it again.
I'll acknowledge I was not the most agreeable part of that, so thank you. We're going to turn back to you, Doug, to.
Yes,
I'm
Terry.
going to excuse myself. Yeah,
Terry,
thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, very good luck with your deliberations.
Thank you, Terry.
Take your time, Doug. There's no
Hurry.
right?
So capital improvements, really not a lot to talk about. The projects are all gonna really kick off, June, next week, after kids are gone. But the weekend, June 20th, 27th, we start getting rid of the remaining modulars, throughout the district. We have the modulars, wireless projects.
They'll all be gone. After the summer, there won't be a modular anymore.
Correct. You want one?
I know, I want to make sure they're all gone.
Trying to save some money.
You're building a bunker.
Storage for
Very, very
No, they're new top metal. They're all done.
The camera equipment replacements and commissioning, some work we're doing wireless at some of the schools, railing work at North, some masonry work and acoustical work at South, and at Goodnow Elementary School, bus garage fueling pad.
What are you talking here on the change order comment?
Where do I have that?
You have requested change order to address conversion of computer lab to classroom over the right-hand column on bid 4.
So right center.
Is that an old comment?
Yeah, that's an old comment. That's something that we, that's actually pertained to, no,
Right center.
It's probably just an artifact with a
no, it
template.
might be, is it potentially right now?
Could be.
Yes.
Is that what it's marked?
Yeah, I think it's right now.
Yeah. So we're, as of this moment, we're just popped, well, didn't just pop, about a week ago, we popped a section at Wrightstown, in fact, 2 sections at Wrightstown. So if that holds, we're going to be in a position to do the same thing there that we've done at the other schools, where we convert that computer lab
Back to a classroom.
back to a classroom. Exactly. Exactly.
So your verbiage means when you pop.
Sorry,
you're
that we
adding
add,
another one?
I'm sorry, yes, that we
That's okay.
add sections, yes, in 2 different grade levels.
Was a price to convert the room, and then it's also a price for wireless access throughout the school, so that we have the ability to have.
So with that, when you're doing that change order, I understand that you're doing some big construction, so I look at Matt and I ask, if they do away with the lab, do we have to do something in terms of on a cart, do we have to buy a new cart for?
For every computer lab that we remove, we're providing 3 carts with 30 Chromebooks each, or 90 Chromebooks to the buildings.
Okay, it's a lot of Chromebooks
for that school, given the grade configuration of the school.
For Wrightstown?
Yeah. So that,
But I'm doing it based on machines being replaced, not number of students. 200 kids? 215.
I understand this, but and in grades 1 through, K through 4. So I just say that I'm not gonna stand in the way of it, but it's something to be considered. All right.
Well, what's the formula for that? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the one lab was there when there were 7 grades in the building. So we didn't, I mean, we probably don't
The lab
need
has
9.
30 computers in it. And instead of replacing them with laptops, I'm replacing the 30 computers with Chromebooks. Now, Kevin King actually emailed me this evening and said, hey, I don't think Beth should get 3 carts. I think, one of those carts should come my way. So that's,
well.
we're discussing that. Kevin's Kevin, but that's just the formula that came up with.
Kevin Goodman, Kevin's good. Newtown, right, where the kids wound up.
So we'll change the,
Can you remind me that I don't agree with that when it comes up in front of us?
All right, so it's just, there's a corollary change, a corresponding change order there. Thanks.
So, Welsh Elementary School roof replacement is scheduled to happen starting next week because we have a minimal time frame from when camps come in to use the gym and there's a roof over the gym being replaced. We're trying to get the sensitive areas complete before the kids come for camps.
Where is our ESY this year? Which way?
ESY is at Newtown.
Is it, okay.
No,
There were some years that it wasn't Welch's.
yeah, it's at Newtown.
Okay.
Plan Prepare South, end of the month start. So those are some of the summer things. This Holland Elementary School toilet room floor replacement we talked about a while back. The only update on this is that we're starting mid-July. The materials are ordered and we'll be starting that mid-July.
And that is a warranty item.
That's a warranty item. Yeah, that's all the areas. The toilet room's in yellow, and then the shaded area represents the amount of tile that's problematic. That whole area will be replaced, not just pieces. Large sections of these will take large pieces of room, not just the little area. So these areas will just do small sections. So that's happening mid-July. Miscellaneous update. This one I think is important to at least understand generally what we're doing. Aramark Custodial Services, as we talked about, budget reductions, as we've been concerned. We found a way to reduce Aramark staff and save about $470,000. In the facilities arena, we saved about $1 million. Half of it came from the reduction of 18 FTEs. Originally, we talked about saying, hey, take them all from your day shift, and our guys will pick up the entire day. When you come in in the afternoon, then you live like Aramark has always lived here. There was a lot of concern expressed by our guys when we talked about that. I heard their concerns. I further researched things, and I met with Aramark again, and we came up with a plan B. We did have a brainstorming session with our guys when I presented Plan B. So this isn't the whole presentation. It's just some select slides of things that were discussed with my team and how we could address this, and took feedback from our guys, and it went really, really well, actually. So we went to Plan B, which was basically, originally we said, hey, let's get rid of day leads entirely at the high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. This Plan B puts a person back from Aramark from 10:30 a.m. Through the day, essentially, to 6:30 p.m. at the high schools and middle schools. So we'll still have Aramark daytime presence from 10:30 in the morning through the rest of the day. So we're not losing their assistance in the buildings. They're reduced, but they're not gone. So not big reductions in the middle schools, half in the high schools.
What's GSF per square footage?
More
GSF.
Second column.
Second column.
Yes, gross square footage, yep, sorry, getting late. Elementary schools, basically we said, hey, we'll get rid of day leads in the Plan B. We said, we'll bring them all back, we'll have one in each elementary school, starting at 10:30, extending through 6:30.
How does that save you money? That's what
It saves us money because Aramark is able to cut some staffing by not coming in at 6:30, the 4 hours that they're not coming in, and offsetting the shifts the way they're offsetting them. They're realizing the same savings that they've.
So those persons are actually starting on some of the tasks that the later shift was doing, and they're just getting it underway sooner in the day.
They're doing things different.
So their shift was 6:30 to,
Their shift was 6:30 to 3 o'clock. We were leaving, and then our staff was leaving at 3:30, so there was overlap. And then the second shift came in at 2, so there was overlap between those shifts. The problem with the 2 o'clock shifts at the elementary school is it's really challenging for them to do a lot starting at 2 o'clock. This alleviates some of that.
How long has that schedule been like that?
As long as I've been here, at least 5 years, but before I came. Things don't change much between Sale House, Chancellor's, Lining Ford. So the daytime reduction is about 3.
The lady who sits here when we're in a meeting, she's not on the schedule.
She's on this.
Well, she wasn't on the Chancellor Street schedule, so.
She comes in second shift, so she's she's on this chart. So north, south, evenings, we go from 11 to 10 at each high school. Middle school, Holland 4 to 3, Newtown 4 to 3, Richboro 3 to 2. Elementary school nightlies change a little bit, maybe by one person for the most part throughout. Chancellor Center goes from 2 to 1. So instead of one person waiting for the meeting to end, one person. Sale House, they'll pick up with shared staff, and Lining Ford, not a big deal. Again, they'll share a person, they'll come over and get there to clean it. So the evening reduction is about 15 FTEs.
So you made a comment about 2 people waiting for the meeting to end. What would 2 people do after we ended our meeting?
2 people I've never seen 2 people here waiting.
No, there's usually 2 people here, and we'll be 1.
What do 2 people do?
They clean the building at night. They come in in the afternoon, end of the day, and they clean the toilet rooms, they sweep, they vacuum.
They're here until 10:30.
They're here at 10:30 at night.
They don't vacuum during the school board meetings because it's been a problem.
Sure. Okay.
There are many evenings that we end later than that, so end up locking up the building.
Right. So they implement plan. We decided to implement Plan B. Our staff certainly liked having someone here part of the day versus none of the day. The buy-in was strong. Start at 10:30. Their day shift ends at 6:30. They'll come in at 3:30, and the second shift will come in at 3:30. Instead of ending at 10:30, they'll end at 11. That gives us an extra half hour at the end to possibly get gyms cleaned and things that we might not have been able to do by Aramark had we stopped at 10:30. Because we end our facilities use at about 10, and in order to get the gyms clean, which Aramark used to do first thing in the morning, that will give Aramark an hour at night to try to get the gym swept up and clean before our kids come in the morning. So that extra half hour helps us at the back end. Building mechanics start time, instead of starting at 7 and working till 3:30, they'll come in at 6:30, which is when Aramark used to come in, disarm the buildings, do all the things that Aramark did. They'll end at 3 instead of 3:30, but again, not an issue because the day shift for Aramark is here till
I
6:30.
have to tell you, that just on the surface seems, the last line there, just seems like such a much better thought out plan to have our staff be the guys opening the building who discover the broken pipe, this, that, the other thing, because they're in a position to get the ball rolling, to get kids in that building an hour later, half an hour later. A much superior plan.
Great job on this creative thinking on this. This is great. This is really great. I appreciate all of you getting together and doing that.
Work with the guys, certainly care about our people and our staff and try to keep them gainfully employed and dealing with a service contractor versus our own. And initially, there certainly was a lot of back and forth, but everybody really came together in the brainstorming session.
We are very fortunate to have staff who understand much more than just their perspective on it. They have a much broader understanding of what happens.
So we brainstormed and we jotted everything down that the guys talked about, and essentially we're going to address all the things that we worried about. What between 6:30 and 10:30, how does it work without Aramark here? What will our people have to do that they didn't have to do before? And I only have a couple slides, I won't be long, but there was concern about that gap, so we're gonna start at 6:30. Everyone's on board with that. Disarming the alarms, we will take care of. Accommodating the champion staff that come in at 6:45, we'll be there to take care of. Raising the flag, we can certainly take care of.
Can I ask a really stupid question about this? Like, don't get me wrong on this. On the ground-mounted flags, is that not something that a student can, participate in?
Some schools do, it's not necessarily us. It needs to happen.
Yes, it does.
In a lot of schools, the principals have kids doing it.
Obviously,
I'm just
on a
making sure
rooftop-mounted
somehow
building,
needs to happen.
but, okay, that's fine.
Unlocking classroom doors is not an issue, that'll.
Doug, it looks like an issue on there. I'm glad you said that.
Which part?
The undecided, teachers will assist you. It almost looks like.
Well, what happened is some schools, Aramark was going through to every room and unlocking in the morning.
Right.
Other schools have keys in the mailbox. A teacher comes in, grabs their key,
Okay.
goes to their room, unlocks it, has their key all day. If there's a lockdown, they have the key.
Right.
When the day's done, they put it back in the mailbox. And it's taken care of without Aramark being involved.
So that's what we're going to implement.
They're going to do more of that than we did. And that actually ensures people have keys all day as well.
Okay.
Address spills, this was, sicknesses, toilet room challenges. Yes, we'll do that between 6:30 and 10:30. However, elementary school kids don't come in until 9, so we have an hour and a half of time where there's a little bit of risk for our guys, but they'll do what they need to do. Setting up cones for student arrival, we can certainly help with. Establishing timing of meetings, the principals, mechanics have meetings to talk about what's happening throughout the day when they move them to the end of the day versus mornings. Cleaning of gym remains a PM activity since we're going to have an 11 o'clock closing time, so that is resolved. Ensuring sufficient stocking and maintenance supplies, we'll make sure we have it in the event we need it. Functional equipment for our use if we need to do something, making sure Aramark's giving us good stuff. We'll work with them on that. They wanted a memo to the staff explaining the expectations and how all this looks. That went out 2 days ago, also with a 30-day notice for a change in hours, but everybody was on board with that. There was no pushback. The 1-9 shift at the high schools will remain, so Aramark will still come in at 1 to help with the high schools like they have, which is really big, especially at South. I know that the principals were concerned about that. Coverage for sick and absent personnel. It's the one area that could be a challenge. Our person will be opening a building. If our person that opens a building is sick, we need to make sure somebody else gets there to open the building. Most of our buildings have neighbors, so we can have that person come in, at least go in, disarm the system, and go back to their school. Our principal has key fob, just like most of the teachers. They can get in and move about the building, and we can get a specialist there, someone else then, to cover for the 4 hours later. So that'll work. If there's a major issue, we can always talk to Aramark about providing some people for us. If there's a holiday and you have 7 buildings uncovered or something. Disarming buildings we can take care of. Confirm Aramark supervisor hours. They'll still be here during the day. In fact, they'll probably come in an hour before the 10:30 to make sure that any potential nighttime, daytime conflicts are looked at. If somebody says they're not doing what they should do at night, they can see if they're doing what they should be doing at night by coming in earlier and seeing what was done. Impact of snow removal is certainly a little bit of a challenge because the 6:30 Aramark staff would help get some salt down and do some things with our guys that they won't be there to do. So we'll have to see if that's something. I think more challenging is the 2-hour delay kind of thing, to get the buildings ready. If the building is closed, it's not going to be a problem, but the 2-hour delay, making sure we get sufficient people there to help with that will help. Aramark summer hours remain unchanged. How critical assignments are addressed at stop time, same as they would have been, if it were a earlier stop time. If there's an issue a principal needs addressed and our person is scheduled to leave, they would stay and finish whatever that task is. Specialist covering for absent mechanics, do they stay after 10:30? That's kind of to be determined on a basis when that happens. We have an out-of-building day for our men where they all go to another school to help during the summer with whatever the needs may be in that building. But with the reduced Aramark staff, it might mean we have less out-of-school days to help all the other schools. But if there's an issue at a school, we're certainly going to dive in and get people there. We talked about the shifts that all changed. Cleaning of the natatorium locker room is one thing we'll have to make sure is done by 9 a.m. daily at North. So to look at this, this amendment will be on the next board agenda. The current contract is basically $2,820,000. The custodial is $2,815,000 plus $5,300 for the year for the monthly reporting that we get for energy management. Over 12 months, it's $5,300. So those two numbers equal the number that we have a contract for, plus a lump sum of $80,000 that we bill hourly for if we use the services. The proposed contract is basically taking the $2,815,000, subtracting the $468,000, and when you add the $5,300 to it, you come up to $2,352,000. The actual annual savings for the proposed 16-17 contract is the $468,000 that we asked to see. They had the ability, and they talked about, hey, we still have to put our Act 1 index on this number for the next year. We should get an increase. We should get the Act 1 index increase. That would have added $56,000, would have reduced the savings by $56,000. They said, we really value our relationship with you. We're going to come to you and propose for 16-17, 0% increase and the deduction of $468,000 that we talked about. So I don't think we could have asked for any more from Aramark. The promise I have from them is on top of what we're already doing, if we have to make adjustments as we go, they're willing to work with us to move people around and figure things out as we move. So they have been absolutely fantastic, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, that $56,000, while it doesn't seem like a great deal, is a number I'd love to show to first student who try to take every.
This is an example of a company who understands the term partnership.
Oh, exactly.
You are an example of a company who doesn't understand the word partnership.
They were really fantastic. I need to say.
Thank them.
It could have been to me, it feels like a $524,000 savings because they're not billing us this.
Exactly.
So they really have.
That's fantastic work. I definitely think you should, if you should have an opportunity to say something about Aramark at the next board meeting, I mean, that's tremendous.
Well, truthfully, they're giving the district $56,000.
Yeah.
We celebrate a check for $10,000. We're glad to get it. We celebrate a donation from PTO for $15,000. We're glad to get it. Here you have a vendor that we use who's giving us $56,000.
Fabulous.
So service contracts out to bid.
Can I just have a comment before we go? Is this still Aramark or are we off?
No, we're off of that.
So am I the only one that feels a little frustrated? And Doug, I appreciate the work you did. And I appreciate the work Aramark did, but I kind of feel like we've been overstaffed for the past 5 years. And this is what I talk about with drawing a line in the sand. Unless we say you're not getting the money, then this is the time we take to look at efficiencies. I sat here with the previous superintendent and heard year over year, we're doing everything we can. We're being as efficient as we can. And suddenly we're able to pull $468,000. Wow, I appreciate that. It makes me wonder what else is out there. And it kind of frustrates me that we've been paying this for the past 5 years when maybe we didn't have to. I don't know if I'm the only one feeling that way, but I'm sitting here thinking, I'm frustrated.
I agree, but it is a little murky when it comes to the housekeeping. And I'm glad they worked with us and cut us a break, but I do hear and see with my own eyes that sometimes things could be a little cleaner. I mean, I do hear complaints from staff from time to time. So, and that's under the old gold platinum system. Still wasn't exactly what people were wanting. So, I don't know if things are perfect, but.
Well, I guess, the counter, and I hear both sides, and I say, I'm thrilled for this. I hear your point that says maybe we were overstaffed. The question that has to come, and we haven't put it out, is do we have a satisfaction survey going during the year to see from the people in the building, or to hearing what you say, Bill, are the buildings as clean as they were? Because we may save $468,000 to our detriment, which may have it's just possible.
So I don't know.
Do you think there's any chance that Doug comes back next year and says, I want to add 400 and now it'll be 524,000?
I don't know that Doug will say it.
Under our budget because
So
bathrooms aren't clean enough?
You know,
It's never happened.
I sat in the meeting last week and I advocated for something for special ed, and to his credit, Chuck disagreed with me and would spend the money differently. And I think that reflects well on the district that, you know, people were making cuts and they're gonna make it work. So do I think Doug would come back and not ask for it? I don't think so, which is why I say I wonder about having a survey about the people in the building
And I
to
think
see if
that's a good
it's
point, because
consistent.
I'm trying to dig through my mental archives to remember what I was told. So one thing I was told by an anonymous staff member was toilet paper runs out during the day. And they're smart enough, they'll bring their own toilet paper. Just the person said the kids may not. Sometimes soap runs out. So, you know, just one of those things.
So, and one of the things that's changed with Aramark in the last 6 months or so, a year, they have a new general manager that we deal with, who has monthly meetings with us, who really seems to care a lot about Aramark, our relationship, how things work, how things look. Very interested in making adjustments when we're dissatisfied. I think he's responded better than others. I feel better about them. The level of service is always a challenge. It's only as good as the people they have in each building, and some buildings perform better than others, no question. Some buildings do at night stock their materials the way they should, so that in the morning, we're not running out of soap and toilet paper. Some people, I don't think look as hard to make sure that that's not a full roll, or it is a full roll, or is it half empty, or, you know. I think because of this change, we're going to have to work even closer with their general manager, with their staff, the person they have appointed here. Jack Walsh has always been the guy. He's retiring at the end of the month. They'll have a new employee coming in to take his position over. He also seems very anxious to satisfy us. So we're going to bird dog it. We're going to see how it goes, and we're going to make adjustments, as I said, the best we can.
So it depends on what you think is important, because I know the maintenance guy in the elementary school, which is where I was closest to him, he had a list of projects in the elementary school that needed to be done. And generally, it took him, from his time, 30 to 45 days to fix a non-urgent thing. So if he's doing this other stuff, then we're not getting that door handle fixed, or, you know, whatever. Like, so, you know, there's give and take. Do I think maybe we're overstaffed? Some totally, but I can tell you, I'm going back, so I don't know how it is today, but especially because in the PTA, you're in that, you might as well go to elementary school, right? So you're there all the time. You see all these things. Oh, the shelf on the stage needs to be fixed, or this. You literally like had this list of things, and you see the mechanic around school. You know what he's doing. He's working the whole time, but it took that long. So now he's doing these other things, checking on these that he wasn't responsible for. Then I think those projects. I think your question is what's going to suffer, because if everything stays exactly as it was, then we definitely were overstaffed, right?
Right, but the point is, you can't answer that yet.
Right.
It looks on paper, look what we've done. We've cut millions of dollars. We've cut this contract by $500,000. But the reality is you don't know. You're sort of asking the question as if to say, you've made the cuts and everything remains the same. But it's not until a year from now that we actually know what the implication of that cut was and what the impact was. Some of them may be okay, some of them may not. But overall, I believe with all of these things, there definitely is a tension. It's not attention, but tension. Because just intuitively, you can't get as much work done with 18 less people. You just can't. So how does it get prioritized? How does it how do different people work together to get the same things done? It will be an interesting question to ask after we see how
I
it's
think there's some of them, Mark, to be honest.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
because
there's some,
it's
but-
fair.
Listen, I have friends and relatives who are in the trades, and they are mechanics for companies, and what you always hear about is the little bit of work that's done throughout the day. So I hope that's not the situation here at Council Rock, but I hear about barbecues that happen on Friday afternoons during the summer. Sure, it doesn't happen here at Council Rock, but I know that that's kind of I've heard these
Our
stories.
specialists are very, very good, they're very strong, there's school dude work orders that go out to all of our employees, we track the work that's accomplished through school dude. If things are taking too long, it becomes evident on school dude. As people finish things, they have to reply and let us know.
School what?
It's a software program called School Dude. School Dude.
Hey, dude.
So all of those things are tracked and you can print it and say, look, you were supposed to do this and it's been 5 days. Help me understand what's happening. So everybody has different levels of, efficiencies and drive. I think we have some very strong specialists. I think and we talked about it, when things can't happen during the day from one of our guys because they might be helping with the cafeteria or something like that, then a specialist may have to come to assist to address if there's something urgent in that building where he's being pulled off of a project he was working on elsewhere. We'll feel it, but
I think the pieces.
as you said, I won't know until we get into this. I think you all make good points.
That's
We'll
one
learn.
of the pieces with this whole budget of all the things that were cut, where it's hard to sit here on this side and say, how much of that was we were just overdone in the first place, and how much of it is a year from now, pain and suffering, or things that didn't happen. And, that's a hard charge, but I kind of give it to you guys to tell us that. All the cuts made. Some of them you might say, oh, turns out we maybe could have made that 2 years ago because it wasn't that bad, but this hurt us here, or whatever.
It's also, there's a level of compliance. You've done great work in terms of your cooperation with these folks. They have too. But I think there's a different level, potentially a different level of compliance, because they were saving the jobs here. That's a very different approach than had we just gone back and said, hey, we want to work a little tighter, leaner, and meaner. People have lost their jobs. So I think the climate is different, Mark. I'm not disagreeing with all of what you said, but I think the climate is a little bit different than it has been in the past.
So time will tell. We'll see and we'll report back at some point to let you know. Certainly you'll know if things aren't good, you'll tell me.
We'll hear
I'm sure we'll let you know. Let's get through the service minutes.
We're almost finished. So these are service maintenance contracts that are out the bid due back July 1st, and I'll bring this to you at the end of July at that board meeting. That's it.
Good job.
Great.
Thank you.
Public comment yet?
Briefly?
Yes. On our mark, not all schools are equal. They have different numbers of students in different square areas. So maybe what would work in a 250 student school with only 9 sections may not work in a Goodnow or Churchville where there's over 800 and they're getting the same staffing. 16 years ago, South was being planned, and they planned South to orientate itself differently than it is today. The locker rooms were going to be, as you look at the school, on the right-hand side, so all the kids could go out to the field. Then when Northampton Township got involved and said they would build the pool, which was on their land, they flipped the whole building to make the locker rooms next to where the pool would be. And that also changed the parking lot. So the student parking was going to be behind, and the staff parking would be now what we have the buses, and that's why that's a mess. Because when Northampton did that agreement, they just flipped the whole design around. 14 years ago, when South opened, it opened without a pool and without a track. And it still doesn't have it, even though many people advocated when we got the Melsky money to build a pool. And we said, no, we want to save it. We don't know what the financial needs are going to be. We don't want to use our 3 whatever million it was to build a pool. Now, if you push back the building of a middle school track till after the middle schools are finished, that means they won't open until 2020. Because the schools are opening in 2018, you need 12 months to get approval, then you have to go out to bid and build it, so it will be 2020. So you will be making the same kind of error that they made when they decided, well, maybe we could build a track down the line or a pool down the line. Council Rock never does things down the line. It's 2016 now, and you have an opportunity to make sure that a middle school has a track. And you can talk all you want, I value track. But when you don't put a track in, it says you value having dedicated fields, where a hockey field one season in hockey, and a baseball field is only used during baseball season, and softball during, and all those fields stay fallow, and then there's no track field. So, actions speak louder than words. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.